It is Friday, the 19th of December. This is Rise and Shine. We are Channel Africa. My name is Asanda Beda. Good morning. Let's get our news. Here's Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and a very good morning to our listeners. Over 1,000 civilians have been killed when a Sudanese paramilitary group took over a famine-stricken displacement camp in Sudan's Darfur in April, including about a third who were summarily executed. This is according to a report by the UN Human Rights Office. For months before the April 11 to 13 assault, the Rapid Support Forces blocked entry of food and supplies to the Zamzam camp in Sudan's western region of Darfur, which houses nearly 500,000 people displaced by civil war. The report said that during the takeover, the RSF directed attacks against civilians and survivors reported widespread killings, rape, torture and abductions, with at least 319 people executed in the camp as they tried to flee. The findings are based on interviews conducted in July 2025 with 155 survivors and witnesses who fled to Chad. Nigeria's Foreign Minister Yusuf Tuga has formally apologized to Burkina Faso for the unauthorized entry of a Nigerian military jet into Burkina Bay airspace, an incident that led to the detention of 11 Nigerian servicemen. Tuga's spokesperson said the detained personnel had been released and were due to return to Nigeria. According to the Nigeria Air Force, the plane was flying to Portugal when it developed a technical problem and had to land in Burkina Faso. The unauthorized landing sparked a diplomatic row with the alliance of the Sahel states made up of Burkina Faso and its neighbors Mali and Niger. Washington has condemned what it calls the South African government's recent detention of U.S. officials in a Home Affairs operation in Johannesburg, in which 7 Kenyans were arrested. Washington says U.S. officials providing humanitarian support to Afrikaners were detained and their official information publicly released. Home Affairs Minister Leon Schreiber says the Kenyan officials were working illegally when they were processing Afrikaner refugees' applications on behalf of the U.S. Sharon Bryce Peace reports.
The Office of the State Department spokesperson referred to the action by the South African immigration officials as an attempt to intimidate U.S. government personnel who were in South Africa on official business. The statement says the U.S. would not tolerate such behavior towards government officials or towards any of its citizens legally and peacefully operating abroad. It alleges the public release of personal identifying information of an official, which SABC News is seeking clarity on. The threatening statement further says that failure by the South African government to hold accountable those officials responsible would result in severe consequences, and calls on the government to take immediate action to bring this situation under control.
The Democratic Republic of Congo says it is skeptical about the claim that the M23 rebels are withdrawing from the eastern city of Uvira. They captured the strategic town near the border with Burundi this days after a historic U.S.-brokered peace deal between the Congolese and Rwandan governments aimed at ending the long-running conflict in eastern DR Congo. While service Reuters reported yesterday that residents said the rebels had not withdrawn. The group says it began pulling out its fighters, but a Congolese government spokesperson, Patrick Muyaya, says this is a diversion.
Of course, it's a diversion. We all know that is about Rwandan different forces acting. We should make sure we can verify how many there were in Uvira, why living, what they live in the city. Most of the time, we know the way M23 or Rwandan different forces acting. They can remove some part of military. Certain can war like civilians and being in the city.
And lastly, a French doctor has been sentenced to life in prison over the poisoning of dozens of his patients. Frederick Pechia worked as an anesthetist in the eastern city of Benascon and was found guilty of killing 12 patients in an alleged attempt to discredit his co-workers. His youngest victim, a 4-year-old child, survived to cardiac arrest during a routine tonsil surgery in 2016. The oldest victim was 89, the BBC's Hugh Schofield reports.
The court heard evidence that over 9 years from 2008, Frederick Pesce put chemicals like potassium chloride or adrenaline into the infusion bags of patients undergoing operations. These provoked cardiac arrest or hemorrhaging, and in the ensuing panic, he was often the expert who stepped in to save the patients. Not in all cases, though, because 12 people died. The prosecution said he was a psychologically troubled character who acted out of grudges he bore against other anaesthetists and from a desire to appear as a saviour.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Bafana Bafana's captain Ronin Williams' family has expressed pride in his achievements and leadership. Jarvis and Jamison lead tough opening round of Mauritius Open. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine. Every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
All right, and we're coming live to you from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa as Channel Africa, bringing you news and current affairs from the African perspective. We'll be together for the next 3 hours. I'm Asanda Beda, driving the show solo today. And of course, there's quite a number of stories that we'll be looking at. In the meantime, you can connect with us at Channel Africa 1. That's our handle across our social media platforms. That's where we also live stream to you this morning. The SABC Plus is another way you can connect with us. That's the app on mobile phone, and as well as channelafrica.co.za, our website. One of the stories we'll be looking at, but later on the show, is the Southern African Development Community, SADC, marking a major milestone in its fight against corruption. It's been 20 years that they are commemorating since the adoption of the SADC Protocol Against Corruption. So a gathering was held in Tanzania on this, and we'll be discussing how far SADC has gone and what has been achieved in those 20 years. And also what the renewed commitment should be moving forward. The theme being the SADC Protocol Against Corruption at 20 for this commemoration. And it continues to say facilitating sustainable cooperation for economic integration, peace, security, and good governance. So was a workshop as well that was held there, and we'll discuss that in terms of where we are as the Southern African Development Community. Also, it is Friday, so we take a lighter note later on in the show, and we give you the Arty Beats. That's where we check in with the world of entertainment, of the arts, and of lifestyle. So lots to come on the show. Of course, happy holidays and a happy Friday, everybody.
9 to 12 midday Central African Time. On the move with Balisa Tau and Benjamin Mushatama.
Now, when you go to the hospital, there's medical attention that you need, and that's the only experience you're expecting to have. If you are a transgender person, sometimes those experiences can be marred by the demand of trying to understand your gender, your sexuality, and not particularly getting the assistance that you need.
One time, I was sexually abused by someone who used to live next door to my house. So when I went to the police to report, I was in a weave, I was wearing a dress, and when I got there, the police person that helped me said to me, obviously we're gonna rape you because why do you walk around looking like trying to be a woman when you are a man? And after that, the person just walked scot-free.
How do you deal with that? Because there's a double barrel abuse there. So it's not even double barrels, there's kind of multi-dimensional forms of abuse.
I think one thing that I will tell you about trans people is we are strong, not because we want to be strong, but because we don't have an option. It is what it is. Because the struggles that we face each and every day are like unimaginable.
Keeping you on the know and on the move. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
So after the 6 a.m. news on Rise and Shine, we bring you this segment of the show. It's called the Africa Roundup. This is where our team of reporters, our researchers and our editors come up with a list of news that need to be told to you so that you can be updated in terms of what's happening in and around our continent. And of course, this also serves as the throw forward to the day in terms of what we can expect to develop on the news. So we do this after the 6 a.m. news every day on Rise and Shine, or Monday to Friday. Today's Africa Roundup starts with the M23 group, who say it is withdrawing from Uvira in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, and they've promised to complete the pullout soon. The withdrawal follows pressure from the United States. The Democratic Republic of Congo says the withdrawal is a diversion and needs verification. M23 leader Bertrand Bisimwa said the withdrawal was underway and urged mediators and international partners to ensure the city was protected from what he called reprisals, violence, and remilitarization. And then we go to Limpopo in South Africa, where immigration officials at the Beit Bridge border post in Limpopo, South Africa, have their work cut out for them as they assess documents of thousands of travelers and holiday makers making their way to neighboring countries for the festive season. Officials have been assessing at least 18,000 travel documents per day. Lutendo Bodobi is watching that development.
Thousands of people who are heading to Zimbabwe and beyond. This is an assortment of nationalities and people from Zambia, people from Malawi, it is even as far as DRC, and most of them ply their trades in South Africa, while some are just here to purchase some essential commodities that are not there at home, or that are just too expensive at home, and they pass through the border every day and then go back, after purchasing whatever they are purchasing. These are thousands of people. The queue you see here is long and winding, and of course, immigration officials now have their work cut out for them. Also, BMA officials are there just to make sure that there's law and order. And of course, you will see, some chance takers who are trying to pass through here without necessary documentations. I just learned earlier that some of them were arrested, especially on the N1. This is a long and complex and laborious process, assessing these people.
South Africa's Department of International Relations and Cooperation has initiated formal diplomatic engagements with both the United States and Kenya to resolve the matter of 7 Kenyans who abused their tourist visas. Home Affairs says they violated the South African immigration laws. International relations expert and former ambassador Dr. Kingsley Makubele weighs in on this.
In this instance, there are things that are not clear, because sometimes, I think early this year, there were reports that the United States is considering sending Kenyans to come and process this Afrikaners here. I don't know. And they said they were in discussion with the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. I don't know if this permission was given, what are the conditions, but if permission was given, it's a bit unfortunate. Now, if you read the statement that was published and attributed to Tommy Piggott, who is the deputy spokesperson at the State Department, he really provides some warnings to South Africa that are very concerning. I mean, one of the things that he says is that they can't comment in details about the incident until they have details. But he then goes on to say they expect cooperation and accountability from the South African government, a big problem. Then he goes on to say that they find it unacceptable that South Africa interferes with their refugee operation. Now, do we have a refugee operation in this country that the United States can willy-nilly set up? That's a huge challenge. If they were given permission, it's something else. But there's nothing called a refugee operation in terms of the function of diplomatic missions.
Women in Port Sudan are finding ways to endure and lead as the war in Sudan continues to uproot millions. Displaced from their homes, many are rebuilding livelihoods through small businesses and community networks, sustaining families amid uncertainty. This is a story of resilience, quietly reshaping daily life away from the front lines. Naba Muhyiddin reports from Port Sudan.
In a quiet corner of Port Sudan, as the city absorbs waves of displaced people, resilience is taking shape. One loaf of bread, one stitched dress, one determined woman at a time. At the center of this story is Namarik Ismail, forced to flee her home by war. Namarik now starts her mornings here, at a small women-run shop where survival has turned into purpose. She's not alone. Across Port Sudan, thousands of displaced women are rebuilding life from almost nothing, sustaining families through bakeries, tailoring cooperatives, and small street businesses, often while carrying the weight of loss, uncertainty, and responsibility.
Also in Sudan, efforts are underway to restore electricity in the country after drones struck a key power station, triggering outages in major cities, including the capital. Sudan's national electricity company says the attack damaged transformers and disrupted supply to several states. The BBC's Richard Kagu has the details.
The strike hit transformers at the Al Mukrin power station, a critical hub in Sudan's electricity network. Al Mukrin receives power from Sudan's largest hydroelectric source before it is redistributed to other parts of the country, meaning the damage has had a far-reaching impact. The paramilitary Rapid Support Forces have been accused of carrying out drone attacks across areas controlled by the army, frequently targeting civilian infrastructure.
The United States says it convened a successful G20 Sherpa meeting in Washington earlier this week, attended by all G20 member states except South Africa. In a statement, the U.S. indicated that Poland also participated as the only full guest participant. South Africa has criticized its exclusion by the United States as contrary to the principles of multilateralism and confirmed that it did not require an invitation to participate as a full and founding member of the bloc. Sherwin Bryce Peace reports.
It's unclear if and how South Africa's exclusion from this week's Sherpa meeting was addressed by other member states present in Washington, but Pretoria had earlier signalled that it had encouraged members to express their own views on its unilateral exclusion. Speaking to this week's Sherpa meeting, the statement says the US reiterated its core thematic priorities, which include unleashing economic prosperity by limiting regulatory burdens, unlocking reliable and affordable energy options, and pioneering new technologies. The US says it launched working groups to develop concrete deliverables for each of the themes. Sherwin Brycepeace, SABC News, New York.
Finally, Nigeria has formally apologized to Burkina Faso for the unauthorized entry of a Nigerian military jet into Burkinabe airspace. According to the Nigerian Air Force, the plane was flying to Portugal when it developed a technical problem and had to land in Burkina Faso. Nigeria's Foreign Minister Yusuf Tuga led a delegation to the Burkinabe capital, Ouagadougou, to discuss the incident with military leader Captain Ibrahim Traore. It remains unclear when the military personnel and the aircraft will return to Nigeria. And that's how we come to the end of today's segment of the Africa Roundup. We'll do this again on Monday after the 6 a.m. news right here on Rise and Shine.
Africa at Play with NATO and ETO chairman.
Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2025. Bafana Bafana's opening match is against the Portuguese-speaking nation Angola on the 22nd. What can we expect from Hugo Bros and his charges?
When we went to the previous tournament, we sort of had the underdog tag as a country, and we were a little bit humble. Expectations were not as high as they are now at the moment. So I just felt that players were in a good good space psychologically. I just feel that Bafana Bafana will still be tournament favorites. But coach Hugo Bros has a lot of work psychologically to make sure that players remain focused, humble, and players are playing without any pressure. Because when South African players are very creative, then we know that the outcomes are very good. But when they are under pressure, we know that sometimes the outcomes can be what we don't want to experience.
Coach Thabo Senong.
Live every Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Central African Time. Unwinding with Africa's holiday rhythms. Rejoice with Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Mass atrocities in Sudan's Darfur region show alarming indicators associated with the risk of genocide. This according to the United Nations Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide, Chaloka Beyani, who has completed a mission to Kenya. Fighting between the Sudanese Armed Forces, or the SAF, and the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or the RSF, alongside other armed groups, has plunged large parts of Sudan into deepening humanitarian and protection crisis since April 2023. More than 11 million people are now internally displaced, while up to 4 million have fled to neighboring countries and beyond. UN News' Stella Vuzo in Nairobi spoke to Chaloka Beyani, where he met several Sudanese refugees. She began by asking about his main message to the Sudanese people.
The key message is actually to inform the public in terms of why the visit, what came out of the press conference and the statement that was read about the nature of the mass atrocities. They are widespread, they are consistent, they involve mass killings, sexual violence on a massive scale, enforced disappearances, torture as well. And our assessment indicates, in the context of our framework of analysis, that these are not just atrocity crimes, but they are targeted against specific African groups in Darfur. The Zagawa, the Fur, the Maliset as well. That raises a red flag in the context of the Convention on the Prevention of Genocide.
What does this mean to the people of Darfur? What kind of message are you trying to portray to them in terms of the assistance that the United Nations is eventually going to provide to them?
That they are not alone in their suffering, that the situation is being monitored closely, being followed, evidence is being collected, and that the perpetrators of the crimes will not go scot-free eventually, and that a victim-centered approach is necessary. Stop the guns, have peace, have a framework for peace, have accountability, and have reparation for the victims.
And in terms of the numbers of the people who are really falling victims to this genocide, is it something that you could speak about right now?
Well, my office does not call it genocide as such because we are not competent to do that. The stand of the United Nations is that only a competent court can make a decision on that aspect, but we can assess the likelihood of the risk of genocide using the atrocity framework. But you have about 11.3 million people internally displaced. There are about 3.5 or 4 million refugees in and around the region, and I spoke to some of the refugees here in Nairobi, and their trauma is quite obvious, that they need healing, they need support, but also there are reported to be 70,000 people still missing and unaccounted for in Darfur.
That was United Nations Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide, Chaloka Beyani, speaking to UN News' Stella Vuzo in Nairobi.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
The United States Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has announced measures aimed at protecting children from harmful medical interventions. Kennedy says doctors are providing needless and irreversible sex rejection procedures, accusing them of endangering the lives they are sworn to safeguard. He laid out the rules regarding funding for these procedures.
The American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, peddled the lie that chemical and surgical sex-rejecting procedures could be good for children who suffer from gender dysphoria. They betrayed the estimated 300,000 American youth ages 13 to 17, conditioned to believe that sex can be changed. They betrayed their Hippocratic oath to do no harm. So-called gender-affirming care has inflicted lasting physical and psychological damage on vulnerable young people. This is not medicine, it is malpractice. We're done with junk science driven by ideological pursuits, not the well-being of children. A peer-reviewed report published by the HHS Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health last month confirms that sex-rejecting procedures impose medical dangers and lasting harm on children who receive these interventions. So today we are taking 6 decisive actions, guided by gold standard science and the week 1 executive order from President Trump to protect children from chemical and surgical mutilation. This morning I signed a declaration: sex-rejecting procedures are neither safe nor effective treatment for children with gender dysphoria. These procedures fail to meet professionally recognized standards of care. Medical professionals or entities providing sex-rejecting procedures to children are out of compliance with these standards of health care. This declaration is a clear directive to providers to follow the science and the overwhelming body of evidence that these procedures hurt, not help, children. Additionally, CMS is proposing 2 new rules. The first rule will bar hospitals that participate in Medicare and Medicaid, which is almost every hospital, from performing these dangerous and harmful procedures. The second rule prohibits the federal Medicaid dollars from funding the sex-rejecting procedures on minors. The FDA is issuing warning letters to 12 manufacturers of breast binders, which are medical devices used for purposes such as assistance in recovery from cancer-related mastectomies. The FDA is telling these companies that the illegal marketing of breast binders to children for the purpose of treating gender dysphoria commits significant regulatory violations and requires swift congressional or corrective action. If the manufacturers don't comply, they could face enforcement actions, including product seizures. Finally, our Assistant Secretary of Health, Admiral Brian Christine, today signed a public health message to inform healthcare providers, families, and policymakers that current evidence does not support claims that puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries are safe and effective treatments for pediatric gender dysphoria. These announcements are grounded in evidence and shaped by compassion. President Trump has made child protection a national priority. The Make Our Children Healthy Again strategy demonstrates that commitment. Sex-rejecting procedures rob children of their futures.
That was United States Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. As South Africa seeks to diversify trade with a number of countries around the world, Pakistan's High Commissioner in South Africa, Malik Muhammad Farouk, says Islamabad will always want to boost economic ties with Pretoria.
The 2 countries enjoy very strong, close and cordial relations which are based on trust, mutual respect and cooperation. All we need is just to take this or translate this into real terms, that what is good for the 2 nations. Our bilateral trade currently is touching around $500 million, but when you look at the size, potential or the diversity of the 2 economies, it's far below the potential. And from our government, the government of Pakistan, they introduced Engage Africa policy, and out of this Africa policy, South Africa enjoys the pivotal role or the center of that policy. So we know that South Africa itself is a huge country with a lot of potential, and it also serves as a gateway to the other African countries in the southern side. So all you need is that look at the potential and the complementarities that exist between the two nations. So, for example, if you talk about the agriculture, we know that South Africa's economy is based on agriculture. Same is the case with Pakistan. The good thing is that there's no competition. Like if we can quote the example of mangoes and citrus, where both countries have these, but in the different timelines of the year. We have now citrus in Pakistan, and you are looking forward for the mangoes. And we have mangoes in Pakistan, and we call it king of fruits, and that comes in May, June, July. So and that time you have citrus here. So looking at the challenges, especially currently, where South Africa is looking for new partners, diversifying its trade, Pakistan can be a very important trading partner. I think to me is the lack of information.
That was Pakistan High Commissioner in South Africa, Malik Mohammad Farouk. It's now 6:30 Central African Time. Let's get our news headlines. Here's Onel Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Over 1,000 civilians have been killed when a Sudanese paramilitary group took over a famine-stricken displacement camp in Sudan's Darfur in April, including about a third who was summarily executed. This is according to a report by the UN Human Rights Office. Washington has condemned what it calls the South African government's recent detention of U.S. officials in a Home Affairs operation in Johannesburg, in which 7 Kenyans were arrested. And the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says that his government will establish a national gun buyback scheme. This is in response to Sunday's mass shooting at Bondi Beach in Sydney. Channel Africa News, I'm Oneli Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's check in with the world of sports. Here's Fikile Lingwati with our first full update for this Friday.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
First up in our sports update, we begin with football news. As South Africa prepares for the upcoming AFCON tournament, the family of Bafana Bafana captain Ronwen Williams has expressed immense pride in his achievements and leadership. They say his journey is a testament to hard work, discipline and belief, and a voice strong confidence in the national team's ability to lift the AFCON trophy for the first time in nearly 30 years. According to the family, the current squad is driven by a strong winning mentality, unity and resilience. Qualities they believe set this team apart. His uncle and former coach, Maurice Camelio, shares his pride.
I think it was last year they said, Ronwen, there's something missing in your career. It's a World Cup appearance. He said, no, they are not. He said they are working hard on it. So I will assume it's the people at Bafana. And really, we as a family are very proud. Even when we went to the Club World Cup, we were very proud.
The inaugural FIFA Women's Club World Cup will take place in January 2028. And this with the tournament scheduled for mid-season in Europe's top domestic leagues. FIFA had pushed the competition back to 2028 from its original date of 2026 in March this year, to allow stakeholders more time to prepare and give women players some breathing space in an already condensed schedule. The tournament hosts have yet to be confirmed, and while the competition will take place during the National Women's Soccer League Championship off-season in the US, it will disrupt the season for many of Europe's leagues. The Women's Club World Cup will see 6 teams take part in the play-in stage, with the 3 winners advancing to the group stage, joining 13 other clubs. Now, the Extreme Fighting Championship, known as EFC, President Cairo Howarth says The introduction of fully covered medical care for athletes has been one of the Federation's standout achievements this year. The mixed martial arts fraternity continues to make significant strides, with an increase in events, especially showcase planned for Cape Town, and growing interest from sponsors coming on board. Howarth says improving fighter welfare has been a key priority, one the organization is proud to have delivered on.
2025. It's been an awesome year for EFC and the sport of mixed martial arts on the African continent. Some of the highs were definitely implementing full medical aid for all contracted EFC athletes. That's a world first. So if you're a contracted EFC athlete and competing for us, we put you on a medical aid, a private medical aid that's fully covered for and paid for by EFC. And we're really proud to have implemented that.
And finally, golf news. South Africa's Casey Jarvis and Scotland's Scott Jamieson share the clubhouse lead after a grueling opening day at the AfriAsia Bank Mauritius Open. Battling strong winds and rain at La Reserve Golf Links, both carried 5 under par 67s before play was halted by darkness. They sit one stroke clear of a chasing pack that includes former champion Dylan Fritteley, Herman Lobsher and Brendan Stone. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Well, it is the festive season. We know that we all travel, we all want to buy gifts, we all get festive in the mood to be jolly and all of that. And with that comes money and spending. So a story that we're going to be touching on is how consumers are being cautioned against overspending during this festive season. We know January will be coming up and fees need to be paid. School stationery, school uniform and all those things, reality will hit, and we don't want that stress to overcome us. So South African consumers are urged to spend wisely over this festive season to avoid a financial hurdle when we start the new year of 2026. Important things to note and to be remembered.
The sound of Africa is evolving. Experience our new mobile app. Free to download, free to connect.
Let's now find out what's happening in the world of business. And here is Chanduko Ligege with our first update for this Friday.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and good morning. Let's start in East Africa. Efforts are underway to restore electricity in Sudan after drones struck a key power station, triggering outages in major cities, including the capital, Khartoum. Sudan's National Electricity Company says the attack on the Al Makrin power station in Atbara damaged transformers and disrupted supply to several states. The paramilitary rapid support forces have been accused of targeting civilian infrastructure in army-held areas. West African crude oil sellers are struggling to find buyers for up to the 26th of December and January loading cargoes due to stiff competition from plentiful and cheaper alternative supplies. Analysts say the amount of unsold Nigerian and Angolan crude is a symptom of a wider oil market surplus. It drove selling on the international futures market that pushed Brent crude below $60 per barrel to the lowest since May this week. According to two traders, approximately 20 million barrels of Nigerian oil for December and January loading remained unsold by Thursday, while Angola's December-January program still had as many as 5 to 6 cargoes available. Various stakeholders, including the African Development Bank, the United Nations and the World Bank Group, have convened in Lilongwe, Malawi, to discuss policy priorities needed to expedite the country's economic recovery. The three institutions have also produced policy notes titled No Time to Waste, a document that contains recommendations on key priorities the country should emphasize to address prevailing economic challenges. The World Bank country manager Firas Rad says the document was developed in response to the government's efforts to address Malawi's challenges such as foreign exchange scarcity and food insecurity. Earlier, United Nations resident coordinator in Malawi, Rebecca Ada Donto, said Malawi is at a decisive moment that requires urgent action to tackle the challenges facing the nation. Zimbabwe has introduced new regulations restricting the participation of foreign nationals in some of the country's economic sectors and subsectors. Under Statutory Instrument 215 of 2025, foreigners in Zimbabwe are barred from operating in sectors such as artisanal mining, bakeries, advertising agencies, salons, employment agencies in the local arts and crafts industry. Director of the Center for Natural Resource Governance, Farai Maguwu.
According to the policies they have announced, foreigners must, first of all, within 30 days, submit a regularization plan to the government. And if that plan is approved, they have 3 years to cede 75% of their shares to locals.
The German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has announced that the EU is to provide an interest-free loan of more than $100 billion over the coming 2 years for Ukraine. He says that Ukraine will use the money to fund the war against Russia.
Das Finanzpaket für die Ukraine steht.
The financial package for Ukraine has been finalized. As I had called for, it encompasses a zero-interest loan of 90 billion euros, and Ukraine will only have to pay back this loan once it has received reparations from Russia. You know that we had already decided this on Friday. We decided to block Russian assets and have them blocked until Russia pays reparations.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 453, Botswana 13 pula 08, Kenya 128 shillings 03, Zambia 22 kwacha 93. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 50, Russia 80 rubles 01, India 90 rupee 47, China 71.03, South Africa 16 rand 77. $1 is 75 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $4,314, platinum at $1,912 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $59.65 a barrel. That's all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
At Channel Africa 1 is our handle where you can get in touch with us with your questions or views about our show. We'd love to hear from you, not just as Rise and Shine, but generally as Channel Africa. And we're broadcasting from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. If you've just joined us, good morning.
Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Stay tuned to Channel Africa. Stream us on our new and updated website, channelafrica.co.za.
South African consumers are urged to spend wisely over the festive season to avoid a financial hurdle in January. Old Mutual personal finance expert John Manyike says this is because there is typically a 6-week pay gap between December and January. He says that consumers need to prioritize their spending to cushion the January financial blow. Notando Magudulela reports.
Some consumers usually feel financial hangover in January following the December festivities. Old Mutual personal finance expert John Manyike says this is because consumers go into the festive season to splurge without a proper budget. He says going into the festive season without a budget is a recipe for disaster come January. Manyike warns that this kind of behavior leads to a stressful January where people could find themselves not being able to make ends meet.
The first pitfall is people not going into the festive season with a budget.
Number two, not prioritizing the essential stuff. Number three, sometimes this whole influence where you have visitors or friends, that's where things go wrong because you want to impress people. So this people-pleasing syndrome is the reason why a lot of people are struggling with staying within their budget because you want to impress people. Or some people say they want to thank themselves, and that's another pitfall. We say, I want to thank myself. It's been a long year, 11 months. But that 1 month could actually cancel everything that you've accumulated over the past 11 months. And then it means you're going to start a new year crying. And I don't think it's the right way to actually start the new year on a financial back foot.
Standard Bank Solution owner for Digital Money Manager, Shanae Motalal, says an analysis of salaried workers' pay cycles by Standard Bank shows that with public holidays, shutdowns, and year-end leave, the festive season fast-tracks the December payroll cycle.
South Africans have typically coined very playfully as the January that never seems to end, and actually there's some truth in it. Analyzing the pay gaps between December and January for salaried workers actually reveals that we wait 6 to 7 days longer than in any other month.
Momentum Investments economist Tiamo Masike says while consumers are willing to spend, they remain cautious compared to the previous year.
Now that we are in the festive season, spending expectations are slightly better than a year ago, but the tone remains cautious. We saw Black Friday sales were stronger than in 2024, which shows that consumers are willing to spend, but selectively. Households are focused on value, and they are responding to discounts and promotions rather than splurging on discretionary items. We also saw in the fourth quarter that consumer confidence did improve, which to us suggests that households are less pessimistic this festive season. Particularly, the middle income group showed the strongest rebound. However, consumer confidence is still well below long-term averages, which tells us that this is more of a stabilization than a full recovery.
Looking ahead, Masike says she expects household financial resilience to continue, but at a slower pace than this year. She says this is because some of the factors that helped consumers through the year are fading, such as the two-pot retirement withdrawals. Notando Makutulela in Johannesburg.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Just gone 6:46 Central African time here on Rise and Shine. Leaders are meeting in Geneva this week to review a global agreement meant to protect refugees. But in Africa's biggest refugee hosting country, Uganda, the reality on the ground is putting that promise to the test. Michael Balege has more.
Uganda is often praised for its open-door refugee policy. Nearly 2 million refugees live here, most fleeing war in DR Congo and Sudan. Refugees are allowed to work, move freely, and use public services, but the system is under growing pressure. This year alone, more than 140,000 people have arrived, overwhelming reception centers and stretching food supplies. Funding cuts have forced aid agencies to reduce rations and in some cases suspend food assistance altogether. Frank Walusimbi from the UN Refugee Agency in Uganda warns that richer countries are stepping back, leaving host nations like Uganda to shoulder the burden.
We are getting so many people that need healthcare services, mental health and psychosocial support, and a lot of other services in the health sector. If you talk about WASH, we've seen people struggling to get water. In Achivale here, it is 7.4 liters per person per day. That is so little. It is very, very little. And we are thinking if we don't get funding that comes in a way that we call flexible to mean that we can allocate to the different sectors without having to earmark it to certain activities, we're going to see these problems continue.
This week, Japan donated rice worth more than $2 million, helping feed new arrivals in their first days. It's a welcome relief, but officials say it's not a long-term fix. Refugee advocates warn that when host communities are also struggling, resentment can grow, a concern familiar to South Africans watching migration debates at home. They fear refugee protection is becoming political, traded for funding, instead of being treated as a shared global responsibility. Mike Kobaleke, SABC News, Kampala.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
As South Africa's parliament rises for the year, moments of reflection and goodwill have cut across party lines, with members of parliament setting aside political differences to acknowledge a demanding year, honour colleagues who have passed on, and wish one another and South Africans a safe festive season. Mkokeli Bandla reports.
National Assembly Speaker Thoko Titiza led the closing reflections, thanking parliamentary staff for their work under difficult circumstances, remembering members who passed away and urging MPs to travel safely as they return home for the holidays.
We must also express our appreciation to the administration of Parliament for all their efforts throughout this challenging term. Honourable members, I also note that during this year, we lost some of our members who have been called to higher service. We remember them and their families, and we also appreciate the service they have paid in our society. And I trust that as we go home, we will travel safely, spend time with families and our loved ones over the festive season. Please, those of you who are driving, drive safely and arrive alive.
Across the aisle, all parties echoed the message of appreciation, with the DA Chief Whip George Michalakis acknowledging constructive engagement in the House and wishing MPs time to reconnect with their families.
I wish to thank all of our colleagues in this House on both sides for the mostly constructive debates. The presiding officers, especially Madam Speaker, and the Chief Whip of the government for the excellent working relationship, as well as the Chief Whip of the opposition, all three of them. I wish you all a peaceful and much-deserved December break. May you get to spend precious time with those we often neglect in this work, but without whom we would not be able to fulfill our calling of serving our beautiful country, our families. I wish you all well.
The MK party's Des van Rooyen used the moment to call for a renewed focus on solutions over positions, encouraging MPs to return refreshed and ready for the work ahead in the new year.
Let us argue less about positions and more about solutions. Let us prioritize the people over the politics, and let us return with fresh energy, ready to work, ready to lead, and with microphones that hopefully will finally function as we occupy the revamped Dome in January, and we are told that we'll also occupy the new restored Parliament building in November. MKP wishes you a restful and enjoyable festive break. To those traveling, we wish you a safe journeys to your respective destination. Siyabonga, Rialeboga, Paya Danki, we thank you.
While maintaining a political edge, the EFF's Hlengiwe Mkhaliphi reminded MPs of the responsibilities that await them in the new year, urging them to rest now ahead of what she says will be an intensified push for accountability and transformation.
Please pull up your socks, because when we come back in 2026, we need you a venue to accommodate all 400 MPs. We need to ensure that the executive is accountable. We are the legislative body. We are not the extension of executive. So therefore, we need all of them here. They must not be dodgy. To EFF Grand Forces, we are going to meet here next year, same place. Please go and rest, because we are ready to take up the GNU up. We need to fight this until the poor black child is having freedom.
IFP Chief Whip Nhlanhla Hadebe highlighted road safety and responsible behavior over the festive season, while praising the quality of debate in Parliament as a sign of democracy at work.
We reiterate our plea to the people of South Africa to practice safety when driving, to avoid excessive drinking, and to let shop owners know that they will face the full extent of the law if they sell alcohol to minors. We also wish to express our appreciation for the mature debates that have taken place in this House throughout the year, We have truly witnessed democracy in action. Honorable members, let us take this time to rest well and return ready to continue serving the people of South Africa.
Despite sharp political differences throughout the year, the final sitting saw MPs united in reflection, gratitude and well wishes, closing off a demanding parliamentary year with a shared message of safety, rest and renewed commitment to serving South Africans in the year ahead. Mkokeli Bandla, SABC News, Parliament.
Cheers to rest and renewal. Festive African greetings from Channel Africa. Go on, download the Channel Africa app.
South Africa is among the world's fastest adopters of generative artificial intelligence, with 45.4% of adults using these tools. This is according to new research from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, and the American multinational digital communications technology conglomerate, Cisco. The findings also reveal generational and well-being divides. Tuto Ngobeni filed this report.
New research from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, and Cisco shows that South Africa is among the world's fastest adopters of generative artificial intelligence, AI, with 45.4% of adults using these tools. Yet the findings also reveal generational and well-being divides. The report reveals that while younger South Africans are driving adoption with high trust and confidence, older adults remain uncertain and far less engaged. For Mike Mpanya, leader of Cisco's Country Digital Acceleration Program in Africa, he says Africa's infrastructure development is on the right trajectory.
If we are to think about how Africa is faring in terms of AI infrastructure development, the answer in terms of the trajectory perspective is that Africa is on the right trajectory. We are advancing and we are advancing well. However, Africa remains underserved. And this is a challenge, but also an opportunity where we're seeing the major cloud providers coming in, investing into the continent, a number of large tech players, Cisco included, making the right kinds of investment. However, we do know that for AI infrastructure to succeed, the adjacent industries and pre-existing conditions need to exist as well for success, and those being largely connectivity and reliable electricity. So in broad terms, the answer is we are advancing well, but more specifically, and where the opportunity is for us to reflect on the kind of infrastructure required for us to succeed in terms of deploying AI in Africa. And our view at Cisco is a sovereign, localized, nuanced infrastructure is most likely to succeed. And that for me is the exciting opportunity that we see when it comes to AI infrastructure on the continent.
Artificial intelligence has been seen as a tool to empower emerging economies, as AI is ultimately about enabling people to shape their own futures, and that when technology aligns with human purposes, it helps build more resilient and thriving communities, which Mpanya says with Africa's youngest population in the world, AI is going to enable Africa's growth on a scale that no technology has been able to do so far.
When we think about what's needed to unlock Africa's AI potential and for Africa to be able to compete globally, we've got the traditional things, which is connectivity, energy, compute, talent, capital, governance. And to that end, we've got the World Bank and IFC making serious investments. We've got organizations like Cisco. We train more than 1.2 million people in Middle East and Africa every year, based off our stats last year, through Cisco Networking Academy. But what I think is most important and should be top of mind for us thinking about how Africa can compete globally and what we can contribute to the world is African use cases. So Africa will distinguish itself because we'll be solving for challenges nobody else has. And in solving for those challenges, we are likely going to drive the necessary innovation that will propel AI forward, because our environment has so many constraints. Constraints on connectivity, constraints on energy, constraints on fundamental logistics. And history has taught us that necessity is the mother of innovation. And if we focus on applying AI to local Africa-specific problems, we'll be able to lead and teach the world. And That for me is particularly encouraging.
Mpanya further says, in terms of Africa competing globally, the continent will distinguish itself as it faces different challenges in comparison to other parts of the world.
If we're going to think about how AI relates to the continent's socioeconomic problems and whether AI can solve those socioeconomic problems, we must first begin by identifying what are the most pressing issues on the continent. In my perspective, I think the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity on our continent remains poverty and unemployment. Why? Because Africa's radical advantage is not the minerals under the ground, but the people who walk that ground. In 25 years, we are going to benefit from a demographic dividend that no other continent has. And when we think about what young people need to unlock their potential, healthcare, education, the ability to trade, AI is able to enable that on a scale that no technology has been able to do before it. We are talking about an exponential level of productivity and opportunity. So AI is an enabler for the underlying economic conditions, but AI is not a silver bullet.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongo Beni in Johannesburg.
This is Rise and Shine, and this is Channel Africa. That's where we're broadcasting Rise and Shine via, and we are live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. My name is Asanda Beda. It's 7 o'clock Central African time. Let's start with our news. Here's Onel Nsinzi, and then following her is Figile Lingwati with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Over 1,000 civilians have been killed when a Sudanese paramilitary group took over a famine-stricken displacement camp in Sudan's Darfur in April, including about a third who was summarily executed. This is according to a report by the UN Human Rights Office. For months before the April 11 to 13 assault, the Rapid Support Forces blocked entry of food and supplies of the Zamzam camp in Sudan's western region of Darfur, which houses nearly 500,000 people displaced by civil war. The report said that during the takeover, the RSF directed attacks against civilians, and survivors reported widespread killings, rape, torture, and abduction, with at least 319 people executed in the camp, or as they tried to flee. The findings are based on interviews conducted in July 2025 with 155 survivors and witnesses who fled to Chad. Washington has condemned what it calls the South African government's recent detention of U.S. officials in a home affairs operation in Johannesburg, in which 7 Kenyans were arrested. Washington says U.S. officials providing humanitarian support to Afrikaners were detained and the official information publicly released. Home Affairs Minister Leon Schreiber says the Kenyan officials were working illegally when they were processing Afrikaner refugees' applications on behalf of the U.S. Sean Price Peace reports.
The Office of the State Department spokesperson referred to the action by the South African immigration officials as an attempt to intimidate U.S. government personnel who were in South Africa on official business. The statement says the U.S. would not tolerate such behavior towards government officials or towards any of its citizens legally and peacefully operating abroad. It alleges the public release of personal identifying information of an official, which SABC News is seeking clarity on. The statement further says that failure by the South African government to hold accountable those officials responsible would result in severe consequences, and calls on the government to take immediate action to bring this situation under control.
Nigeria's Foreign Minister Yusuf Tuga has formally apologized to Burkina Faso for the unauthorized entry of a Nigerian military jet into Burkina Bay airspace, an incident that led to the detention of 11 Nigerian servicemen. Tuga's spokesperson says their detained personnel had been released and were due to return to Nigeria. According to the Nigerian Air Force, the plane was flying to Portugal when it developed a technical problem and had to land in Burkina Faso. The unauthorized landing sparked a diplomatic row with the alliance of the Sahel state made up of Burkina Faso and its neighbors Mali and Niger. Some Malawian nationals who were traveling in an overloaded bus have been left stranded in Polokwane in South Africa's Limpopo province. The 65-seater bus was carrying 117 people, including 15 minors traveling from the Gauteng province to Malawi. Traffic officials impounded the bus and the driver was arrested. One of the passengers, Elastine Kamanga, says he requested to be refunded his bus fare when he realized it was overloaded. Kamanga says he doesn't feel safe at the traffic center. He says they are waiting for the bus owner to pay a fine for the bus to be released.
We were stranded here. We didn't eat since morning up to now. So we are trying to push the owner of the bus, but it's just saying just wait until now. But you see, all these people that are suffering, we are waiting for them to release us. So far, the police has already released us so that we can go. But this bus is not load worthy like a long distance. So.
And lastly, the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says that his government will establish a national gun buyback scheme. This is in response to Sunday's mass shooting at Bondi Beach in Sydney. Albanese says that the scheme will collect and destroy hundreds of thousands of guns, including surplus, illegal and newly banned weapons. The BBC's Katie Watson.
On Sunday, flags will fly at half-mast, and the Prime Minister invited people to light a candle at 6:47 in the evening, exactly a week on from the attack that killed 15 people and wounded dozens more at a Hanukkah celebration on Australia's most iconic beach. The Prime Minister also announced what he called the largest national gun buyback scheme since a massacre at Port Arthur, Australia's worst mass shooting in its history nearly 30 years ago. We need to get more guns off our streets, he said at a press conference, noting that currently there are more than 4 million firearms in Australia.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Oneli Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African perspective.
Now, sports headline. The Democratic Republic of Congo have called up Gail Calcutta to replace injured Mario Stroikens. Australia is in control of the third test as England slide towards series defeat. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wherever the hour finds you, across the world, here's your morning African lens on the world's leading story. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
In this hour, we enter now 7 o'clock, and it's the second hour of Rise and Shine. Quite a number of stories we'll be looking at. Two of them is foreign traders who are increasingly dominating Ghana's retail market. They're raising concerns about the survival of local businesses. And this is according to the Ghana Union of Traders Association, who say that now foreign businesses control nearly 70% of the market. We'll be getting analysis in terms of how that figure was reached and what research was done and what that means for the market in terms of Ghana and the local market, that is. Also, today is the third and final day of the World Health Organization, WHO's second global summit on traditional medicine, jointly organized with the government of India. It's taking place in New Delhi. So we'll be talking about what's expected to be announced as some major initiatives from this, as well as what the new commitments will be going forward. Those stories and more are coming up. My name is Asanda Beda, and you can connect with us on channelafrica.co.za, on our SABC Plus app, and also via YouTube, where we are live streaming.
Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Tumeona chapisho mapema hii leo ya kwamba Wizara ya Mambo ya Nje ya nchini Marekani imesema inapitia upya uhusiano wake na nchi ya Tanzania. Pengine taarifa hii imepokelewaje na wananchi wa Tanzania?
Cha kwanza tumeiona taarifa ambayo imetoka hii leo. Sisi kwetu taarifa hii haikutushangaza wala haikutushtua, kwa sababu tulishaona taarifa kama hiyo imetoka kwenye ubalozi wa Marekani mtihani nchini Tanzania, ikiwa imetolewa na Bwana Tom Pigot.
Umezungumza kwa kina kabisa. Haya ni malalamiko ambayo yamekuwa yakijitokeza mara kwa mara. Unadhani sasa je, wana hoja ya msingi?
Unauliza maswali mazuri sana na maswali ya tafakari. Maswali ambayo hayawezi kujibiwa kwa dakika moja au kwa siku moja. Ni maswali yanayohitaji tafiti, yanayohitaji kusoma.
Darubini ya Afrika kila Jumatatu hadi Ijumaa kuanzia saa 11 kamili hadi saa 12 kamili jioni majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Nigeria's Foreign Minister Yusuf Tuga has formally apologized to Burkina Faso for the unauthorized entry of a Nigerian military jet into Burkinabe airspace, an incident that led to the detention of 11 Nigerian servicemen. The detained personnel had been released and were due to return to Nigeria without saying when. The plane was flying to Portugal when it developed a technical problem and had to land in Burkina Faso, according to the Nigerian Air Force. Lebukhang Mabange has more.
Well, first of all, I'm leading a delegation sent here by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
The delegation, which arrived in Ouagadougou on Wednesday, met with Burkina Faso's President Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Maitama Tuga, delivered a message of solidarity and fraternity from President Tinubu and engaged in discussions on enhancing bilateral relations, regional security and economic collaboration. Talks focused on coordinated responses to regional security challenges and collective action through existing sub-regional frameworks. During the visit, the two governments also amicably resolved issues concerning Nigerian Air Force pilots and crew, showcasing the effectiveness of dialogue in handling sensitive matters. President Traoré expressed gratitude to President Tinubu, stating the importance of closer collaboration, particularly in addressing shared security and development challenges across the Sahel and the wider West African region. Ambassador Tuga reiterated Nigeria's commitment to good neighborliness and sustained engagement with Burkina Faso, emphasizing support for initiatives aimed at strengthening regional cohesion, peace and economic integration. He also highlighted President Tinubu's readiness to collaborate closely with Burkina Faso to advance stability and development. Both sides agreed to maintain regular consultations and pursue practical measures to deepen bilateral cooperation and regional integration, reflecting a shared resolve to promote peace, unity and stability in West Africa. The delegation additionally met with the detained Nigerian crew who were reported to be in high spirits. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebukhang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za.
Foreign traders are increasingly dominating Ghana's retail market, raising concerns about the survival of local businesses, according to the Ghana Union of Traders Association, GUTA, which says that foreign businesses now control nearly 70% of the market. Outgoing GUTA President Dr. Joseph Obeng warns that traders from Nigeria and parts of Asia are outcompeting locals through aggressive pricing, tax avoidance and labor violations, prompting renewed calls for government intervention, similar to recent moves to restrict foreign participation in the gold sector. For more on this, Dr. Obeng joins us now on the line. Dr. Obeng, thank you for making time for us. Good morning.
Good morning.
You say foreign traders now have control of about 70% of Ghana's retail market. What is the evidence that GUTA has gathered relying on to support this figure?
Okay, so the evidence is so real and it is so physical, what we see from the market itself. You see that these foreign companies keep expanding, especially the China Mall, Chinatown, the Panda, the what have you. They keep expanding, opening in all localities and all that, whilst the local businesses keep shrinking in sizes. You see, the psychology here is that the locals travel to China to go and buy their wares. And so if the Chinese themselves are here, then the psychology is that their prices may be cheaper, and that all our customers now troop to these areas to buy goods. And so it's a fiscal evidence that is happening in our country, and it's very worrying. If care is not taken, by 10 years' time, if the trend continues, the locals will be out of trading, and we will go and be shopkeepers in these foreigners' shops.
So, how has weak enforcement of Ghana's investment and retail laws enabled these foreign traders to dominate these spaces that you say are meant for local businesses?
Yeah, so the lack of enforcement is indeed very worrying, because our laws are so clear. Our laws do not allow any foreign national to participate in trading activities, or even providing other services in the local market that are designated by the metropolitan assemblies. And so it's a no-go area for which it is easy for the authorities to clamp down on these people. And then also they give a window of opportunity for these foreigners to come into trading. By the investment laws, you have to invest $1 million and then employ 20 skilled labor, for which they are not doing. So if they are able to even enforce, then of course they will be able to save the situation. We've been in talks with them now. The new CEO of the Ghana Investment Promotion Authority or Council says that it is going to make a roadmap, and then they have come out with the directives to the traders in the marketplaces to leave the markets, but no, they are not observing it. So we have to go even beyond the directives given by the GIPC itself, and then government itself come in and then find a way to clamp down on these illegitimate traders.
Right, and as you cite, the effect is quite clear in terms of growing foreign dominance and what that has on Ghanaian traders. But also following the government's decision to restrict foreigners from the local gold market, what specific actions would Guta like to see authorities take in the retail sector?
Okay, so we have a serious problem as a country. These people come and depend on our limited foreign resources. The government itself recognized that our efforts to make to industrialize and to make import substitution by way of being self-sufficient and all that is being curtailed by these activities of these foreigners. We are not being able to achieve these goals, this very laudable industrial policy and all that. So definitely it's taking a chunk of our resources, for which government itself have to do something about it if you want its industrialization agenda to succeed. And so we don't have any option than to let them abide by our laws and all that. Every country has got restrictions one way or the other to protect some aspect of local businesses. It is there everywhere. So we do not have to be, we don't have to shy away from enforcing our laws because of diplomacy, international diplomacy and all that. I think that has been the bane. We have to look within and then do what is right for us. Even in the larger economies, they are doing this. The tariffs, this thing arrangement being done by America. When you go to China today, your phone will not work because they will want you to adapt the WeChat and all that. The WhatsApp doesn't work. It's a state policy to protect their communication industry. So we do not also have to shy to protect what is preserved for the locals. That it has been enshrined in your own investment act. And so I think that's why we keep on pushing the government. You hear the locals going on demonstrations all the time and all that that you hear from time to time. Sometimes we take the laws into our own hands, go and lock the shops and all that. So the onus lies on government now to also support us in this quest. I know
Dr.
government has
Obeng,
good
thank you so
intention for
much.
us, but sometimes due to the pressures of the international communities, they are not able to do what is needed for the locals.
We appreciate your time so much, Dr. Joseph Obeng is outgoing Ghana Union of Traders Association Guta president.
Let's just do it. Your life just got easier. Get the Channel Africa app and take us wherever you go. Catch the latest news, enjoy your favorite shows, stream the music you love, and stay connected to the continent. All in one spot, right in your pocket. Simple, quick, and always with you. The Channel Africa app. Download it now on iOS and Android. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
As Sudan's war continues to uproot millions, women in Port Sudan are finding ways to endure and to lead. Displaced from their homes, many are rebuilding livelihoods through small businesses and community networks, sustaining families amid uncertainty. This is a story of resilience, quietly reshaping daily life away from the front lines. Naba Mohidin reports from Port Sudan.
In a quiet corner of Port Sudan, as the city absorbs waves of displaced people, resilience is taking shape. One loaf of bread, one stitched dress, one determined woman at a time. At the center of this story is Namarik Ismail, forced to flee her home by war. Namarik now starts her mornings here, at a small women-run shop where survival has turned into purpose. She's not alone. Across Port Sudan, thousands of displaced women are rebuilding life from almost nothing, sustaining families through bakeries, tailoring cooperatives, and small street businesses, often while carrying the weight of loss, uncertainty, and responsibility.
I'm originally from White Nile State. When the war began, I was displaced to Madani in central Sudan. I started rebuilding my business there, but when the fighting reached Madani, I had to flee again, this time to Port Sudan. I chose not to dwell in what we lost, but to start over. As women, whether we are mothers, sisters, daughters, or wives, we carry a responsibility. In times like these, our families depend on us.
For many women, these small businesses are more than income. They are lifelines. They pay for food, rent, and school supplies, while restoring a sense of dignity and control in lives disrupted by conflict. Behind the scenes, local organizations are helping turn determination into stability, offering skills training, seed funding, and safe spaces for women to work and support one another.
These fairs aren't about making profit. I created them to give women a chance to stand on their feet again and support themselves and their families. I'm also a displaced woman from Khartoum, so I understand what it's like to lose everything and arrive in a new city as a stranger, forced to rebuild life from nothing. That's why supporting one another matters.
In neighborhoods stretched by displacement, women are also holding communities together, forming mutual aid groups, caring for children, and ensuring education continues despite limited resources. Beyond the headlines of war, these acts of resilience are rarely seen, but in Port Sudan, women like Namarik are quietly rebuilding hope, not waiting for peace to arrive, but creating it themselves, one small step at a time. Naba Muhiddin, Port Sudan.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
Traffic is expected to increase across South Africa's roads from today as more people travel to their holiday destinations and homes. Traffic authorities are warning drivers against recklessness and impatience on the roads. Meanwhile, a northbound cross-border bus was found to be overloaded. The bus traveling from Gauteng to Malawi was carrying more than 90 passengers, which is above its permitted capacity of 65 seats, most of them women and children. The Department of Transport has warned long-distance bus operators and taxi drivers to ensure that they obey all road rules. To speak to us further, we're now joined on the line by Chief Communication Officer at the Road Traffic Management Corporation, or RTMC, Simon Zwane. Simon, good morning to you and thank you for making time to talk to us.
Morning, and thank you for inviting us.
So what are current traffic volumes looking like at the moment on South Africa's roads?
Well, at the moment, traffic is starting to pick up. It's not yet that busy. We're expecting that as we approach the midday, in about 11, we will be seeing an increase in the number of vehicles on the roads. I think we are counting at the moment about 1,000 or so vehicles an hour getting out of Gauteng on the N3 and the N1 to Polokwane, N3 to KZN. Even the routes going to Mpumalanga, the N4 is starting to get busy. But we expect the volumes to increase as we approach the midday and the afternoon.
How does the RTMC monitor real-time traffic conditions nationwide? And I think you mentioned a few provinces there that are specific ones in terms of high risk for congestion and accidents.
Yeah, we do work with the toll concession companies, and we work with other agencies like the cross-border traffic authority and the border management authority and the SAPS. So working in a coordinated fashion with all of these agencies, so we're able to obtain real-time information about the situation on the roads and what intervention needs to be made.
How effective have the recent road safety campaigns been as far as your monitoring?
Yeah, I think that the campaign has been holding strong so far. Been able to identify those people who are breaking the rules of the roads. They've been held to account. Those are driving under the influence of alcohol. Those are driving unroadworthy vehicles, and those are driving contrary to their operator permits have been held to accountable. We're concerned about pedestrians. Some have been removed from the roads, but that remains our big concern because the high number of people who are dying on the roads now, it's over 40%, is pedestrians. So we'll also be focusing on that quite strongly.
And how does the RTMC deal with unroadworthy vehicles and overloaded trucks and buses, especially because passengers get on these vehicles and they innocently don't know, some of them, and then, it's clamped down and their travel plans get cut short or get delayed?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's entirely true that people don't know that the bus is overloaded. You get in there, it's standing room only, then you know that bus is overloaded. You can't be expected to be standing from Joburg to Malawi. So you know when you get into that bus that it's already full. So, but we are dealing with that. Those buses will not proceed. We'll impound the bus, arrest the driver, and compel the operator to send another bus to come and pick up those people. But actually, the National Land Transport Act empowers officers to also charge the owner or the operator of the bus, because the law places a duty on the operator to ensure that the vehicle is roadworthy, to ensure that the driver is fit and proper to drive that vehicle. So we are finding that some of the drivers don't have public driving permits, that the vehicles are not roadworthy. And for that, the owners must be held accountable as well, not only the drivers, even the owners must be held accountable for the roadworthiness of their vehicles, the fact that their drivers don't have the necessary licenses and permits to be operating those vehicles.
So given that point then, what advice would you give to passengers or travelers who are approaching border posts during this time? Because it does seem that it's not going to stick if you pretend as if you didn't know or you are unaware. So ignorance is not going to help.
No, we are stopping those buses. We will be going also on intensifying that campaign to stop those buses from proceeding. So people who get into that bus knowing that it is overloaded, they're causing inconvenience to themselves because the bus will not reach the destination. They will not be allowed to proceed. And we have observed also that some of the people who wait along the freeway for the bus to come and they get picked up. So the bus might leave the bus terminals with appropriate number of passengers. But as it proceeds, it picks up people along the road so that by the time it gets to the border is overloaded. We will also have to deal with that. Already last night, there was a bus also going to Malawi, overloaded with 32 passengers. That bus has been stopped. The operator will have to send another bus, but that bus is not going to proceed. The driver is arrested.
And that's the reality of it. Thank you for painting that picture for us, Simon, and issuing those warnings. Very important for everybody to be on the know, but also to adhere to the road rules. And thanks again for your time.
Thank you very much.
Simon Zwane is Chief Communication Officer at the Road Traffic Management Corporation, or the RTMC. It's 7:30. It's Central African Time. Let's get our news headlines. Here's Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Over 30 new pledges have been made at the second Global Refugee Forum Progress Review after 3 days of collaboration that reaffirmed international solidarity and commitment to improving the lives of refugees and the communities that host them. Over 1,000 civilians have been killed as the Sudanese paramilitary rapid group took over a famine-stricken displacement camp in Sudan's Darfur in April. This is according to a report by the UN Human Rights Office. And the United States says it convened a successful G20 Sherpa meeting in Washington earlier this week, attended by all G20 member states except for South Africa. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Now it's time for our sports update, and here's Fikile Lengwati to give us the latest.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Let's kick off with football news. The Democratic Republic of Congo have called up veteran Gail Kakuta for the Africa Cup of Nations after injury ruled out uncapped Anderlecht midfielder Mario Stroikens. The 34-year-old, once a teenage prodigy at Chelsea and now playing in Turkey's second tier, returned to the national team after 15 months away. Kakuta will feature at his second AFCON with DR Congo drawn in Group D alongside Benin, Botswana and Senegal. French-born Kakuta represented France up to under-21 level before switching allegiance to DR Congo in 2017. He was part of the squad that finished fourth at the last finals in Ivory Coast. As South Africa prepares for the upcoming AFCON tournament, the family of Bafana Bafana captain Ronwen Williams has expressed immense pride in his achievements and leadership. They say his journey is a testament to hard work, discipline and belief, and have voiced strong confidence in the national team's ability to lift the AFCON trophy for the first time in years. According to the family, the current squad is driven by a strong winning mentality, unity, and resilience, qualities they believe set this team apart. His uncle and former coach, Maurice Camelio, shares his pride.
I think it was last year, then I think the wrong one. Is something missing in your career? It's a World Cup appearance. He said no, they are not. He said they are working hard on. So I will assume it's the people at Bafana. And really, we as a family are very proud. Even when we went to the Club World Cup, we were very proud.
On to the Extreme Fighting Championship, EFC President Cairo Howarth says the introduction of fully covered medical care for athletes has been one of the Federation's standout achievements this year. The mixed martial arts fraternity continues to make significant strides with an increase in events, a special showcase planned for Cape Town, and growing interest from sponsors coming on board. Howarth says improving fighter welfare has been a key priority, one the organization is proud to have delivered on.
2025, it's been an awesome year for EFC and the sport of mixed martial arts on the African continent. Some of the highs were definitely implementing full medical aid for all contracted EFC athletes. That's a world first. So if you're a contracted EFC athlete and competing for us, we put you on a medical aid, a private medical aid that's fully covered for and paid for by EFC. And we're really proud to have implemented that.
And finally, with cricket news, England's hopes of regaining the Ashes are all but over after another woeful batting display enabled Australia to take complete control of the third test. England appeared to be in a strong position after claiming the 2 wickets required to bowl Australia out for 371 on the second morning on a flat pitch at the Adelaide Oval. But the Tories once again came up short with the bat as they were reduced to 213 for 8 at the close after yet more Sneeko controversy. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
We'll be looking later, or not so far from now, a story from Nigeria where young entrepreneurs are breeding scorpions as a form of animal farming, and these scorpions being used for their venom for research. An interesting one there we'll be talking about in just a bit. A lot of innovation happening within the space of agriculture. You know, that topic excites me. Stay tuned for that. We're still with Rise and Shine.
Your life, your rhythm, your Africa. Channel Africa. Find it for free on Google Play and the Apple App Store.
Now let's get our update from the world of business, and Chandugo Likeke will update us.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Ghana's parliament has approved amendments to the Bank of Ghana Act imposing stricter limits on central bank financing of the government to safeguard its independence. The Bank of Ghana Amendment Bill 2025 bars the central bank from buying government securities on the primary market and redefines emergency provisions that previously allowed officials to bypass a 5% lending cap tied to the prior year's revenues. Emergencies are now restricted to force majeure events such as natural disasters, presidentially declared crises, or public health emergencies. The reforms follow criticism over heavy central bank support during the COVID pandemic and its aftermath, when Ghana lost access to international capital markets. Efforts are underway to restore electricity in Sudan after drones struck a key power station, triggering outages in major cities, including the capital. Sudan's national electricity company says the attack damaged transformers and disrupted supply to several states. The BBC's Richard Kagowe has the details.
The strike-seat transformers at the Albuquerque power station, a critical hub in Sudan's electricity network,
Al-Mukrin receives power from Sudan's largest hydroelectric source before it is redistributed to other parts of the country, meaning the damage has had a far-reaching impact. The paramilitary Rapid Support Forces have been accused of carrying out drone attacks across areas controlled by the army, frequently targeting civilian infrastructure.
Zimbabwe has introduced new regulations restricting the participation of foreign nationals in some of the country's economic sectors and subsectors. Under Statutory Instrument 215 of 2025, foreigners in Zimbabwe are barred from operating in sectors such as artisanal mining, bakeries, advertising agencies, salons, employment agencies, and the local arts and crafts industry. Director of the Center for Natural Resource Governance, Farai Maguwu.
According to the policies they have announced, foreigners must, first of all, within 30 days, submit regularization plan to the government. And if that plan is approved, they have 3 years to cede 75% of their shares to locals.
A study has found that a vast majority of banks view AI-driven services as important for improving operational efficiency and customer engagement over the next 5 years. Backbase, the leader in AI-powered banking, has compiled a report of the Africa Digital Banking Experience Series 2025, which highlights that banks are moving beyond the traditional mass-market approach to deliver more individualized, meaningful experiences. Global Strategy and Transformation Director at Backbase, Heidi Custis, says the report confirms that growth, security and customer experience have to be intertwined, and as they are no longer separate strategies and should be enabled by technology.
There are three major areas where banks tend to be using artificial intelligence. So use cases around fraud, but also around customer experience. So major advances in using AI to handle first-line customer experience so that more volumes and more human-like experiences can be had for customer experience. And the other is inside the banks themselves to improve productivity and efficiency of the staff.
The German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has announced that the EU is to provide an interest-free loan of more than $100 billion over the coming 2 years for Ukraine. He says the Ukraine will use money to fund the war against Russia.
Das Finanzpaket für die Ukraine steht.
The financial package for Ukraine has been finalized. As I had called for, it encompasses a zero-interest loan of 90 billion euros, and Ukraine will only have to pay back this loan once it has received reparations from Russia. You know that we had already decided this on Friday. We decided to block Russian assets and have them blocked until Russia pays reparations.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 453, Botswana 13.08. Kenya the dollar is 128 shillings 03, Zambia 22 kwacha 93. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 50, Russia 80 rubles 01, India 90 rupee 47, China 71.03, South Africa 16 rand 77 cents. $1 is 75 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $4,314, platinum at $1,912 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil, $59.65 a barrel. That's all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
So we'll be talking about the third and final day of the World Health Organization's second Global Summit on Traditional Medicine. That's being held in New Delhi in India. And then we will be speaking about that. And this gathering was joined by scientists and practitioners, indigenous leaders from more than 100 countries. Quite a big summit there. And we'll see in terms of what happened in engagements and what collaboration the World Health Organization is looking to achieve moving forward from that gathering.
Africa Update on Channel Africa with Lulu Kabu.
Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi has now accused Rwanda of violating the peace deal. Are you surprised at this latest accusation? This is literally days after a signing a ceremony, so to speak.
This is not surprising. I mean, if you ask Paul Kagame, he would also say almost the same thing. One should ask a question. The broker of the peace deal, President Trump, what is it that he wants? Why now? And why is this peace deal being signed in the Americas and not in the Great Lakes? Paul Kagame has never respected Tshisekedi, as often say. Tshisekedi must deal with the problems in his country. He has nothing to do with it. So this peace deal, obviously, when it was signed, one just looked at it and said, this will not last.
Kenny Matiba, former journalist.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time. Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
In Nigeria now, where young entrepreneurs are breeding scorpions as a form of farming to supply venom for medical research. It's a risky business with potentially big rewards, though, and it's fueling fresh debate about safety, regulation, and ownership. Here's Tsem Akende to delve deeper into this story.
It's feeding time for the scorpions and a chance for them to warm up in the sun. They are fed worms, insects, and egg crumbs, part of a carefully managed routine. Scorpion farming is gaining ground in parts of Nigeria, driven by rising global demand for venom used in medical research. For now, Sunday sells live scorpions, but says the real value lies in venom extraction.
The size of the scorpions, the requirement is 7-inch, and at the same time, we don't extract the venom, we only sell out the scorpions. We are hoping for government to give us their own assistance, maybe by, instead of we selling the scorpions, if we can get the right equipment, we can extract the venom from here by ourselves.
Health experts say venom extraction requires advanced equipment and strict regulation, but the medical potential is significant.
The equipment to be able to stimulate the gland area where these venom are produced in the scorpion, to be able to release them, and then the capillaries too, to be able to extract the venom. And then also, they need to be refined also in the laboratory. And so here, individuals may not be able to produce or to provide all of these equipment. So government has to come in. Brain cancer, gliomas, prostate cancers, cervical cancers. Research has shown that some of the peptide that has been extracted from scorpion venom is used to treat cancer.
Across Africa, including South Africa, researchers are increasingly exploring nature-based solutions for health and innovation. But in Nigeria, government support for scorpion farming remains unclear. While authorities have pledged to back agriculture and economic diversification, there is no specific policy covering venom production. For farmers like Sunday, the hope is that scorpion farming could offer a foothold in the global health economy. Tsem Akende, Jos.
The Upside, taking the African perspective to fresh levels.
From Channel Africa, about to have ourselves a good time right now. Come on, brother. It's a whole thing.
You've partnered up with Focalistic, based on a true story.
You know, it's actually crazy for you to put it like that, partnered up. You know, this is someone I look up to from a very long time. 3 years ago, we put out a single, Pele Pele. Yeah. You know, that was my first record with him. This project, based on a true story, the album was so highly anticipated and premeditated on our end, you know, because something we constantly, you know, kept on going back and forth about, but we never actioned it. It's actually quite crazy because all of this is happening whilst we are both working on our albums. You know, I'm working on my album 31314 because there's a record, 31314, the interlude, so it's like a prelude to the album, you know.
Let me pronounce it properly. Is it 31314? 31314.
The Upside, live and real. It's dynamic. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa. The rhythm of Africa the pulse of the continent. This is Channel Africa. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Still to come on Rise and Shine, we look at SADC, the South African Development Community, having commemorated 20 years of its anti-corruption efforts. How far has the body gone in terms of achieving? Of course, there are some key elements in terms of achievements, but there's also more that needs to be done, as is always the case. We also look at ECOWAS and them celebrating 50 years. All those two different milestones took place this year in August and in May, respectively. We'll be getting analysis in terms of that and the different ways that we should be looking into the future in terms of what needs to be done to put more emphasis on efforts and to drive those efforts forward. So that's what's coming up. And then, of course, as we talk about people traveling and the festive season and everybody being everywhere, we know one of those main places that people would love to visit is South Africa's own Table Mountain in Cape Town. And the Cableway company located there has kicked off its December festive season with a major milestone. We'll find out what that milestone is, and that's later on Rise and Shine.
Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel Africa.
Today is the third and final day of the World Health Organization, WHO's second global summit on traditional medicine, jointly organized with the government of India, taking place in New Delhi. The meeting has brought together government ministers, scientists, indigenous leaders, and practitioners from more than 100 countries. The summit is expected to announce major scientific initiatives and new commitments aimed at advancing the implementation of the World Health Organization Global Traditional Medicine Strategy 2025-2034, centered on stronger evidence, better regulation, systems integration, collaboration, and community engagement. For more on this, we're joined on the line by Dr. Philippe Du-Kingwe, who is a WHO Regional Advisor of Traditional Medicine at the WHO Africa office. Dr. Du-Kingwe, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning. It's Dr. Du-Kingwe.
Du-Kingwe.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that. So please tell us about this second Global Summit on Traditional Medicine. What's the significance of this in the journey of recognizing the use of traditional medicine?
Well, there was a first summit 2 years ago in Gandhinagar, and this summit comes after adoption of WHO new global strategy for the next decade, 2025-2034, that was adopted at the last World Health Assembly in May, and the goal of this summit is basically the implementation of the global strategy, which is basically restoring well-being and balance for our lives through insights from traditional medicine and science. So we have about 32 African member states gathered here, from all the regions, all the sub-regions of the continent. And we have about a grand total of about 80 participants in person at the summit.
Can you give us some examples of some of those African states, those 32? Maybe not all of them, of course.
Well, there are some leading states on traditional medicine, like Ghana. Ghana is one of the leading states on traditional medicine. There's also South Africa, which has a strong contingent of participants. And there are emerging countries on traditional medicine, like Senegal, Chad, Cameroon. We also have several countries from the SADC regional and economic community. And a couple of member states from Eastern Africa as well. So it's well represented. It's a good. I think we're one of the highest represented WHO regions at the summit.
Right. So, an announcement is expected to be made on major scientific initiatives and new commitments aimed at advancing the implementation of the WHO Global Traditional Medicine Strategy 2025 to 2034. Take us through the path that has led to this step.
Well, first you have to talk about the global strategy. The global strategy goal is to advance the contribution of evidence-based traditional medicine to the highest attainable standard of health and well-being. And it has a few guiding principles, which are evidence-based, holism on health, sustainability and biodiversity, the right to health and autonomy, indigenous people's rights. You have to recognize indigenous knowledge of traditional medicine, culture and health, people-centered care and community engagement, integrated health services. I think one of the objectives is to integrate traditional medicine into the health systems, and health equity. And it basically has 4 pillars. And those pillars are strengthening the evidence base for traditional medicine, support the provision of safe and effective traditional medicine, integrate safe and traditional medicine in the health systems, and optimize the cross-sector value of traditional medicine and empower communities. So this is what has been discussed at the summit through various sessions, plenary sessions, and parallel sessions.
Going into this summit, you must have had your own expectations, but also there was an agenda and guideline in terms of discussions. What would you say has been most surprising for you, as today is the final day, in what has deliberated?
Well, deliberation is going to go on today, mostly. There were a lot of discussions. There were a lot of technical discussions for the last 2 days. And various topics, actually, it's hard to summarize everything in just 5 minutes. But there has been a lot of discussion on the research roadmap and how to translate it into global action. Also discussions regarding research methodologies and applications, global frameworks for country implementation of the global strategy, quality, efficiency, and patient safety, regulation of traditional medicine products, regulation of practitioners, capacity building. Those have been some of the discussions that have taken place in parallel sessions. And as I said, as today is the last day and conclusions of different talks that have been going on in those parallel sessions, I cannot make a conclusion ahead of the conclusion that is going to be made officially. But it has been a very fruitful 2 days of discussions.
Despite traditional medicine's widespread use and vital role in stewarding natural resources for health and well-being, less than 1% of global health research funding is allocated to traditional medicine. Why has this been the case? Why does it seem that there is no will to fund the use of traditional medicines?
Well, I think there are several reasons. One of them is, first of all, scientific evidence. There's a lack of scientific evidence, and second problem, I would say, is quality control and standardization. Then there's the economic aspect that also come into play. There's resistance from conventional medical personnel, medical doctors, medical nurses. There are shortfalls regarding regulatory and policy. There's also educational deficiencies. And then, it's a business, actually. When we talk about traditional medicine, we're not only talking about herbal medicine. It goes a lot wider than that. And it's the, I would say, non-scientific aspects that also are a constraint to finance. And then there's the opposition with a big pharma who basically are the most um, active partners in funding research, and I think for the time being, as traditional medicine is mostly used in developing countries and emerging countries, are not really very much interested in investing money into that, because the benefits that they will make out of that is not comparable to what they have regarding manufactured medicines right now, conventional medicines.
Right. Will it serve the integration of traditional medicine to implement regulation around it, as you see it, especially given that, it's such a vast field, as you mentioned, and we can't really have a blanket approach because different countries practice differently. Will it hamper or serve to have regulation for the integrations of traditional medicine?
Well, conventional medicine is regulated. So if you want to integrate traditional medicine into the health system, it has to be regulated. Practices have to be practitioners, products, they have to be regulated. Just the same way that, if you want to practice medicine, you have to have a medical degree, same thing for nurses, same thing for pharmacists. So you cannot have you cannot have a system that has two different sets of ethics for practice of medicine, be it traditional or conventional medicine. So this is where there's a stumbling block, because as conventional medicine is well regulated, traditional medicine is a little more intricate to regulate. And then there's, there's kind of a skepticism from conventional medical staff regarding traditional medicine and how traditional actually, if I go back to 2 years ago, we made a huge stride in defining what modern medicine is. Modern medicine was, by consensus, defined as the sum of conventional and traditional medicine. But in most cases, we still refer to modern medicine as conventional medicine without any place for traditional medicine. So those are some of the problems that we face, and that some countries in, for example, like Bhutan, have solved. So has India, for example, and so there's a learning
So there's definitely
curve
examples that we can look
yeah,
at,
there
as
are several
challenging as it is.
examples we can
Dr.
look at.
Dekinge, we are
And try-
completely out of
yes.
time. We're going to have to leave it there. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Dr. Philippe Dekinge is WHO Regional Advisor of Traditional Medicine at the WHO Africa Office. And that's where we leave that chat and hand over to news. It's 8 o'clock Central African time. Good morning, Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Over 30 new pledges have been made at the second Global Refugee Forum Progress Review in Geneva, Switzerland, after 3 days of collaboration that reaffirmed international solidarity and commitment to improving the lives of refugees and the communities that host them. The new pledges were announced at the gathering in areas including refugee access to employment and education, and lasting solutions such as sustaining voluntary return home and safe pathways to third countries. This brought the total commitments and pledges since the first Global Refugee Forum in 2019 to almost 3,500 across 47 thematic and regional areas, involving over 1,300 actors, including states. Michael Baleke reports.
This week, Japan donated rice worth more than $2 million, helping feed new arrivals in their first days. It's a welcome relief, but officials say it's not a long-term fix. Refugee advocates warn that when host communities are also struggling, resentment can grow, a concern familiar to South Africans watching migration debates at home. They fear refugee protection is becoming political, traded for funding instead of being treated as a shared global responsibility.
Over 1,000 civilians have been killed when a Sudanese paramilitary group took over a famine-stricken displacement camp in Sudan's Darfur in April, including about a third who were summarily executed. This is according to a report by the UN Human Rights Office. For months before the April 11 to 13 assault, the rapid support forces blocked entry to food and supplies to the Zamzam camp in Sudan's western region of Darfur, which houses nearly 500,000 people displaced by civil war. The report said that during the takeover, the RSF directed attacks against civilians, and survivors reported widespread killings, rape, torture and abductions, with at least 319 people executed in the camp or as they tried to flee. The findings are based on interviews conducted in July 2025 with 155 survivors and witnesses who fled to Chad. Some Malawian nationals who were travelling in an overloaded bus have been left stranded in Polokwane in South Africa's Limpopo province. The 65-seater bus was carrying 117 people, including 15 minors travelling from the Gauteng province to Malawi. Traffic officials impounded the bus and the driver was arrested. One of the passengers, Elastine Kamanga, says he requested to be refunded his bus fare, but when he realized that it was overloaded, Kamanga says he doesn't feel safe at the traffic center. He says they are waiting for the bus owner to pay a fine for the bus to be released.
We were stranded here. We didn't eat since morning up to now. So we are trying to push the owner of the bus, but he's just saying just wait until now. But you see, all these people that are suffering, we are waiting for them to release us. So far, the police has already released us so that we can go, but this bus is not load worthy like a long distance. So
the Border Management Authority has added guards and armored vehicles to patrol the border along the Limpopo River between South Africa and Zimbabwe. This comes amid continued smuggling across the border. BMA Assistant Commissioner Banele Mkabele says the vehicle, which are suitable for all terrains use, were donated by the private sector.
We are working in collaboration with them. They supplied us with 3 vehicles that are able to drive on the rough terrain on the borderline. And then the 3rd vehicle, it can actually even drive on the rough terrain, and it can even drive in the water. So at the rivers there, we managed to catch these people because we use the very same vehicle. It can drive in the water, so we are able to intercept and cut the self-made channels.
And lastly, the United States says it convened a successful G20 Sherpa meeting in Washington earlier this week, attended by all G20 member states except for South Africa. In a statement, the U.S. indicated that Poland also participated as the only full guest participant. South Africa has criticized its exclusion by the United States as contrary to the principles of multilateralism and confirmed that it did not require an invitation to participate as a full and founding member of the bloc. Sharon Bryce Peace reports.
It's unclear if and how South Africa's exclusion from this week's Sherpa meeting was addressed by other member states present in Washington, but Pretoria had earlier signalled that it had encouraged members to express their own views on its unilateral exclusion. Speaking to this week's Sherpa meeting, the statement says the US reiterated its core thematic priorities, which include unleashing economic prosperity by limiting regulatory burdens, unlocking reliable and affordable energy options, and pioneering new technologies. The US says it launched working groups to develop concrete deliverables for each of the themes.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, CAF president is confident that Morocco will raise the AFCON bar. And Jake Paul predicts to upset Anthony Joshua with a surprise knockout. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine. Every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
It is now the third and final hour of Rise and Shine. It's Friday, the 19th of December. Thank you for staying with us. And if you've joined us, good morning. We are Channel Africa. From the African perspective, we bring you news and current affairs. My name is Asanda Beda. You can connect with us on channelafrica.co.za, on the SABC Plus app. And you can also find us on YouTube. We live stream there at Channel Africa 1 is our handle. And that handle is also across other social media platforms. And in this hour, we look at the Southern African Development Community, SADC, and West African Regional Organization, or ECOWAS, these regional blocks and the milestones that they've achieved this year of 2025, what these milestones mean, where they started and where they are now and where they should be going. We get analysis in terms of the governments that are across these different regional blocks or that fall under these blocks, and the crises that they still face and where they need to go, and the challenges that they are facing. That was SADC and ECOWAS. So we'll be getting analysis from policy and political analysts. That's what's coming up majorly in this hour. And of course, there'll be other stories. And it is Friday. We'll also touch on a lighter note coming from the world of entertainment, of arts and lifestyle with our RTB feature that will be later.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
In this half hour, we look at the year that was for regional blocs, the Southern African Development Community, SADC, and West African Regional Organization, ECOWAS. Governments across Southern Africa have had to deal with a number of setbacks in 2025 as domestic and global pressure challenged the capacity of the bloc to deal with regional challenges such as post-election political crisis in Mozambique, the socio-economic problems of Zimbabwe and Malawi. ECOWAS, on the other end, is facing challenges of division within Sahel countries. Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger have withdrawn from the organization, and they've decided to form a new Sahel region organization. All these compounded by the shock as U.S. President Donald Trump announced a raft of global trade tariffs in April. Remember that? And then cutting aid to a number of African countries. So quite a lot that these blocs are faced with. But let's look at this now and what these regional blocs are to expect in the year of 2026. And we speak to policy and political analyst, Professor Somadoda Fikeni. Professor Fikeni, we thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me.
So let's start with SADC, the Southern African Development Community, commemorating 20 years this year of combating corruption. They did this at a gathering held in Tanzania under this theme, the SADC Protocol Against Corruption at 20, facilitating sustainable cooperation for economic integration, peace, security, and governance. It's quite a long theme, but I guess it is kind of has to be all-encompassing when we look at the many issues that we have faced within the region. What do you make of these points made in this theme?
Well, I do think that SADC, when you look at the African regional blocs, has been the one that has been relatively more successful because it was dealing with a bloc that had a history of integration and interconnectedness. And this having been the case even during the years of the liberation struggle, when SADC was the frontline state. However, when SADC was then formally constituted or reconstituted, the inclusion of the DRC in the Great Lakes region and other countries such as Madagascar has proven to be quite a challenge in a sense because the political wranglings in those regions have always proven to be very difficult for SADC to address, as you saw with the issue of the war in the eastern DRC, in the regions of Kivu and other regions which are mineral rich. SADC seemed to have been pushed into a corner in terms of security. And at the same time, you saw the challenges of Madagascar when riots and open insurrection led to the ousting of the government. Again, SADC found itself in a helpless situation there. And then the elections in Tanzania. However, when it comes to other areas of cooperation, as you mentioned, such as your corruption, this has found to be a lot more effective. Trade and other trade programs than the police. This is against the backdrop of a year 2025 that has proven to be very difficult for any region on earth because of the Trump factor, which brought in the geopolitical volatility on a scale we had not seen before. And also because of the just surgence of wars in different regions, intra and interstate wars have become a lot more common than we had seen before.
What will be important to note in terms of SADC's anti-corruption cooperation methods, those that have worked and proven sustainable?
One of those is the issue of their cooperation, and even at the level of Interpol, where if crime is committed in one country, their collaboration and the sharing of practices, but also the issue of being able to extradite. Among many of these countries, they do have extradition arrangement. That is very important as a tool of fighting corruption. And now they came up with the strategies of dealing with the organized crime, which tends to be transnational, including the transportation of narcotics. But it is still a problem because you do have different regimes that they have, and even the population movement that is not so well coordinated. For example, you'll find that South Africa often complains that people who come from other countries will use as transit the SADC nations and sometimes even find assistance in that space to come in, only to find that they were transiting. And this has allowed for human trafficking. It has allowed for a whole range of other things. So in that area, that they have not yet harmonized their systems is a problem.
One of the achievements made over the decades by SADC is improved judicial cooperation and mutual legal assistance. How can this achievement continue to be a powerful one given the various interventions of the military when it comes to our continent? Case in point, Madagascar, which you touched on earlier, which seems to be the latest headache for SADC. The bloc has decided to send another team to Madagascar as the country experienced political challenges following the September unrest that then led to the formation of a transitional government and the governance and law in terms of that. So how can the improved judicial cooperation and mutual legal assistance continue to be something that SADC can be proud of having achieved given military intervention?
It is almost impossible and inconceivable when you have a military coup, precisely because the first thing it does is to suspend the constitution. And the coup itself is an unconstitutional change of regime. For that period, I think that particular issue does not become relevant unless they begin to say they are starting a process of coming up with a new constitution, in which case they collaborate and benefit from the regional bloc experience itself, and sometimes even bring in expertise in the crafting of that new constitution. Otherwise, SADC had made it very easy for even appointment of judges from one system to the other. Of course, there are systems such as those of Lusophone regions, which used to be colonies of Portugal. Their systems are quite different in a sense, and that sometimes creates some degree of incompatibility. And I guess it would be the same with the former French colonies. But the work towards harmonizing and sharing of experience continues. But in areas where you have had a coup, that becomes a moot point because the constitution is suspended. They can only assist in negotiations. They can assist in multi-party engagements towards resetting the clock and having a constitution again.
The creation of financial intelligence units and asset recovery officers, let's touch on that as having been noted as another achievement under SADC. What examples have you seen of this play itself out? And can we cite the example of South Africa with its different commissions of inquiries as something that can result in some assets being recovered?
Certainly, but it has not yet kicked in to see the full fruits of it. Precisely because the movement of funds in different countries still has a political overtone, and the extradition of people involved is still a challenge, even though in common criminal cases we've seen the extradition working very well. But in terms of the financial intelligence, it has worked as far as sharing of the information. And this has actually helped South Africa to move from the grey listing because it could demonstrate that working with the regional organizations and the regional countries, it was able to have agreements on how to track finances leaving the country and how to harmonize the systems. Again, it is not a question of 100% functioning. You'll find that, for example, the customs union countries such as your South Africa, Botswana, Lesotho, Swaziland, and of course Namibia, it works better because they've always operated within the common financial system. But once you go beyond that, they are still struggling with the harmonization of the systems in terms of sharing the financial intelligence.
As we speak of struggles, apart from the achievements of SADC, there are gaps. For example, whistleblower protection is something that hasn't been able to be achieved. So how can this be resolved?
It's the political will within a given country and also legislative reform. South Africa is wrestling with that because the witness protection is the law that exists, but it doesn't extend itself to whistleblowers. And whistleblowers have proven to be the most potent element in fighting corruption. At the same time, they have been the most vulnerable, sometimes being killed. The most celebrated case of Babita Deokaran in South Africa after she flagged the procurement that was irregular and the payments that were to be made for the Tembisa hospital. And this is also the case in other countries because whistleblowers at times are seen as political opponents where political leaders are involved. We will see what happens when South Africa has actually finished with the commissions like the Matlanga Commission and to see whether they move with speed to finalize the whistleblower protection and also the resourcing of whistleblowers such that they do not find themselves suspended and vulnerable, unable to continue with their lives because they have exposed some of the powerful individuals But all this depends on the political will of the leaders at the top.
Let's shift now, Professor Fikeni, to ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, having celebrated 50 years this year, marking that in May, and the overall legacy of that, established by 15 West African countries with the initial goal of economic cooperation. Has the evolution of this economic cooperation to now being tackling political, security, and governance challenges mirrored the reality of what this region needed?
Well, I do think that one thing, West Africa has been so prone to coups in the 1960s and early 70s. And it looks like that is now returning, but in a different format in some instances. The failure of the multi-party democracy to deliver and also to deal with the threat of militias, especially in the Sahel region, has invited the army and the geopolitical machinations of global powers into the West African region. And that in itself has led to an unfortunate situation where Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali have broken away from ECOWAS precisely because the coups that were conducted seemed to receive some support from the people who have seen successive failures, corruption, and machinations under the very multi-party democracy electoral system, which had been manipulated, and also the failure of those to defend their countries. This also had these geopolitical overtones because the presence of the French army in those countries had become an issue when militia problems were not being resolved and when the French seemed to protect the French interests or at times seemed to encroach into protecting some of the political figures that are working well with France. So that in itself has put ECOWAS in a very awkward position, but surely it has pushed ECOWAS far away from its original goal of economic integration into dealing with the political and security issues, not having much success as even Guinea-Bissau recently had its own coup, and there was an attempted coup in even a place regarded as relatively stable like Benin.
So, given that, then, should we be viewing this as an affliction on ECOWAS, the exit of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, or rather as a way to celebrate these countries for seeking their own independence?
Well, that you have any regional bloc that is fragmenting, it's a setback. But at the same time, it raises fundamental questions. What is success? How should it be measured? If, for example, some of these coups seem to be supported by the people who say the alternatives have not been working, and that in itself, I think, imposes some degree of introspection to the countries involved in ECOWAS. I mean, even the largest of these countries, the regional power, Nigeria, having its own internal security problems in the west and in the northern regions, which seem to be intractable and not being able to resolve. It makes it difficult for Nigeria to project its own force beyond its own domestic affairs. That in itself means that ECOWAS would have to rethink, revisit its own strategy and try to reestablish relationships with these countries and also question the performance of the procedural democracy, what seemed to be in some instances, when things such as corruption, when things such as security are not being resolved, or even economy for that matter. For these countries, if the military interventions begin to benefit the people on the ground, Perhaps they are presenting a model that we should begin to look at, not just in the traditional eyes, which are jaundiced in saying any unconstitutional change of government ought to be condemned. If thereafter we begin to see the improvement of the economies of these countries, we begin to see new style, the Sankara style of radical transformation, which empowers women, youth, the poor, and so forth. Perhaps it's something that countries should be debating to say, what is success? Look at countries which have not followed the exact Western style democracy, such as China, in a space of 20 years, having lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. Then you begin to ask yourself, is democracy an end in itself, or should it be seen as a tool towards improvement? And it should therefore be assessed in terms of how it impacts on people and people's lives. So that is a debate that West Africa has also highlighted. But on top of that, there are other issues such as your climate change and the expansion of the desert into the Sahel region. That in itself imposes economic conditions beyond what one country can anticipate or resolve. Hence, you're beginning to see the kinds of clashes, some of them ethnic, interethnic, some of them regional, some of them people who used to be cattle headers now who are encroaching into the lands that they used not to have, just to have their cattle grazing. So those are some of the things that we should be taking into account on top of the geopolitical volatility instigated by this open struggle for power and struggle for multipolarity away from unipolarity, where superpowers now are trying to establish their spheres of influence.
Professor Fikeni, thank you very much for painting that picture of the new commitments that need to be made now moving forward, and for all your valuable insights on the other points made. We really appreciate your time as Channel Africa.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. That's policy and political analyst, Professor Somadoda Fikeni, looking back at the legacies of SADC, the past 20 years of especially anti-corruption efforts, and then ECOWAS, the past 50 years, and what's been achieved there, but also, very importantly, to look at what the new commitments need to be moving forward. It's 8:30 Central African time. Let's get our news headlines. Here's Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Over 30 new pledges have been made at the second Global Refugee Forum Progress Review in Geneva, Switzerland, after 3 days of collaboration that reaffirmed international solidarity and commitment to improving the lives of refugees and the communities that host them. The Border Management Authority has added guards and armored vehicles to patrol the border along the Limpopo River between South Africa and Zimbabwe. This comes amid continued smuggling across the border. And the International Criminal Court says that U.S. sanctions against two of its judges over its case involving Israel were a flagrant attack on the court's independence. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's now check in with what's happening in the world of sports. Here's Fikile Lingwati with our update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
We start with the president of the Confederation of African Football, CAF, Patrice Motsepe, has expressed strong confidence that the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco will set new standards for the continent's flagship tournament. Speaking on the sidelines of the FIFA The Best Awards ceremony in Doha, Qatar, Motsepe praised Morocco's unique status and commitment to football development. The CAF president highlighted Morocco's growing football infrastructure and organizational capacity, which have been strengthened by sustained public and private investment. His remarks further fuel expectations that the upcoming tournament will deliver world-class facilities, high-level competition, and unforgettable experience for fans across Africa and beyond. And the incredible journey of Orlando Pirates and Bafana Bafana left winger and attacking midfielder Oswina Police has touched the hearts and souls of the nation. Raised in a gang-ridden Bishop Lavis on the Cape Flats in the Western Cape province, he avoided a life of crime and instead focused on football. A friend and a former teammate in the school's team, Lee Klute, says Police already displayed exceptional talent at school level. He describes Police performance in a knockout match they played in the 2018 K Motsepe schools competition as nothing short of marvelous.
That is the more after being robbed and being treated. He woke up and he told me, you know what, Lee, today I'm scoring a hat-trick with my left foot. Because his right thigh was at that moment was so painful, he could barely walk on it, you know. And for me, that is actually the highlight of Oswinopolis's football career, because in that given time, it took only 30 minutes for him to actually prove to me that what he spoke and what he felt in that time, he could achieve by scoring that hat-trick in within 30 minutes.
And in boxing news, as Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua prepare for the highly anticipated boxing match tonight, tensions were already flaring up as the duo face off at Thursday's evening's weigh-in. As the pair stood toe-to-toe, a small amount of jostling appeared to take place before Joshua drew a finger along his throat in a kill gesture. Anthony Joshua was the first to be quizzed over the words, and he claimed nothing untoward had been shared. Joshua says there's mutual respect. They are just two fighters getting in the ring, but ultimately he will be victorious. Meanwhile, Paul made fun of Joshua's legs, saying they are chicken legs. Finally, cricket news. England's hopes of regaining the Ashes are all but over after another woeful batting display enabled Australia to take complete control of the third test. England appeared to be in a strong position after claiming the 2 wickets required to bowl Australia out for 371 on the second morning on a flat pitch at the Adelaide Oval. But the Tories once again came up short with the bat as they were reduced to 213 for 8 at the close after yet more cynical controversy. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email at channelafrica.co.za or call us +27 11 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figure Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
We'll be looking coming up on Sudan. They have been named the world's most neglected crisis of 2025. This is according to a context crisis poll of 22 leading aid organizations, and we've been speaking about the humanitarian situation in Sudan quite extensively on Rise and Shine. Human Rights Watch having joined us, Doctors Without Borders having joined us, as well as other civil organization groups. So that's coming up. Stay tuned, and we're still with Rise and Shine.
Hearty laughter and joyous gatherings. Channel Africa celebrates the season with you on the African Perspective.
From the African perspective, let's get an update on what's happening in the world of business. Here's Chanduko Likeke.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Canada's Barrick Mining has officially resumed operational control of its Mali gold mine. Barrick will resume production gradually and will focus on mandatory training for employees and contractors. This is according to the Director of Operations for Africa and the Middle East, Sebastian Bock. The two sides reached an agreement last month to resolve their dispute over Barrick's operations in the West African country after 2 years of negotiations. The disagreement over the implementation of a new mining code introduced by the military-led government led to Barrick suspending operations at its gold mining complex in January and a Malian court-appointed provisional administrator taking control in June. Egypt says that a natural gas deal with Israel is a strictly commercial arrangement with no political dimensions, adding it was concluded by private energy companies under market rules without direct government intervention. On Wednesday, Israel approved an export deal signed in August with Chevron and its partners NewMed and Ratio to supply up to $35 billion of gas to Egypt from the Leviathan natural gas field. The deal comes amid heightened regional tensions following Palestinian group Hamas' deadly attack on Israel in October 2023. Ghana's parliament has approved amendments to the Bank of Ghana Act imposing stricter limits on central bank financing of the government to safeguard its independence. The Bank of Ghana Amendment Bill 2025 bars the central bank from buying government securities on the primary market and redefines emergency provisions that previously allowed officials to bypass a 5% lending cap tied to the prior year's revenues. Emergencies are now restricted to force majeure events such as natural disasters, presidentially declared crisis or public health emergencies. The reforms follow criticism over heavy central bank support during the COVID pandemic and its aftermath, when Ghana lost access to international capital markets. Efforts are underway to restore electricity in Sudan after drones struck a key power station, triggering outages in major cities, including the capital. Sudan's National Electricity Company says the attack damaged transformers and disrupted supply to several states. The BBC's Richard Kagowe has the details.
The strikes hit transformers at the Al Mukrin power station, a critical hub in Sudan's electricity network. Al Mukrin receives power from Sudan's largest hydroelectric source before it is redistributed to other parts of the country, meaning the damage has had a far-reaching impact. The paramilitary Rapid Support Forces have been accused of carrying out drone attacks across areas controlled by the army, frequently targeting civilian infrastructure.
A study has found that vast majority of banks view AI-driven services as important for improving operational efficiency and customer engagement over the next 5 years. Backbase, the leader in AI-powered banking, has compiled a report of the Africa Digital Banking Experience Series 2025, which highlights that banks are moving beyond the traditional mass market approach to deliver more individualized, meaningful experiences. Global Strategy and Transformation Director at Backbase, Heidi Clusters, says the report confirms that growth, security, and customer experience have to be intertwined, as they are no longer separate strategies and should be enabled by technology.
There are three major areas where banks tend to be using artificial intelligence. So use cases around fraud, but also around customer experience. So major advances in using AI to handle first-line customer experience, so that more volumes and more human-like experiences can be had for customer experience. And the other is inside the banks themselves to improve productivity and efficiency of the staff.
$1 in Nigeria is 1,000 naira 453, Botswana 13.08, Kenya the dollar is 128 shillings 03, Zambia 22 kwacha 93. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 50, Russia 80 rubles 01, India 90 rupee 47, China 71.03, South Africa 16 rand 77 cents. $1 is 75 pence to the British pound, 85 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $4,314, platinum at $1,912 per ounce, the price of Brent crude oil at $59.65 a barrel. That's all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
At Channel Africa 1 is our handle. That's across our various social media platforms. Do get in touch with us, not just as Rise and Shine, but for the rest of programming coming up on Channel Africa. So today we've been reminded, as it is festive, the festive season, we'll be traveling and spending money. First thing, let's be wise in how we spend our money. We had that chat earlier because January is coming up and we need to make sure that we don't go under the strain and stress of having to figure out what to do during that time. And secondly, let's be vigilant on the roads. First of all, preparing on time It's always best to not rush to get on the roads, be safe, make sure that the vehicles we are using are roadworthy, and to get familiar with the rules in terms of what one needs to adhere to, especially traveling towards the border post and through the border posts. And ignorance and pretending as a passenger like you didn't know what needs to happen is not going to work, as we heard earlier from the Road Traffic Management Corporation. And I think the third thing I would add is let's be understanding and kind always, because it's not always a festive season for everybody. Some people have lost loved ones, others have been struggling financially this year, and they're really just trying to pick themselves up and continue to survive. All right, that's my last point on that one.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Sudan has been named the world's most neglected crisis of 2025. This according to a context crisis poll of 22 leading aid organizations. The humanitarian catastrophe engulfing Sudan has unleashed horrific violence on children and uprooted nearly a quarter of the population. Some 30 million Sudanese people, roughly equivalent to Australia's entire population, need assistance. But experts warn that warehouses are nearly empty, aid operations face collapse, and 2 cities have tipped into famine. Tutongobeni has more.
Since the 15th of April in 2023, there has been an active civil war in Sudan between 2 rival factions of the country's military government. The conflict involves the internationally recognized government controlled by the Sudanese Armed Forces SAF, led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and consisting of the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Republican Guard, and the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces RSF, led by General Hemeti, who leads the broader Janjaweed coalition. Fighting began after a power struggle within the military government that had power following the October 2021 coup. The conflict has caused nearly 12 million to be forcibly displaced, both inside Sudan and across its borders, making it one of the largest displacement crises in recent history. Now, the Context Crisis Poll of 22 leading aid organizations has voted Sudan as the most neglected crisis of the year 2025. United Nations Children's Fund UNICEF representative Sheldon Yett says the Sudan crisis is the most neglected in the world when looking at the scale of the crisis in comparison to others.
I think it's true. The Sudan crisis really is the most neglected crisis in the world. When you look at the massive scale of this crisis, the fact that you have some 21 million people, that's more than many European countries, who are facing food insecurity. You have nearly 8 million children out of school, the largest education emergency in the world. You have famine. You have just the most atrocious tragedies, the most atrocious devastation. We have the bombing of health centers, of schools, the targeting of children. We have some 30 million people requiring life-saving support. The scale is enormous. And you look at those numbers, and it's hard to understand why this crisis is so neglected.
Yet says the crisis is being neglected because it's not happening next to Europe and says it will continue to grow.
I think it's neglected in part because the narrative is difficult for many people to understand. There's no obvious good guys or obvious bad guys. It's confusing to people. It's an area of the world which unfortunately people associate conflict with. It's not happening on the periphery of Europe like the Ukraine crisis. It's not happening in the Middle East like Gaza. And I think people's eyes glaze over. It's unfortunate because people continue to die by the millions here. And if we don't pay attention, the millions will continue to grow. They will continue to cross borders, to arrive in Europe and arrive in the United States. And this crisis will continue to grow.
He further says it's imperative that the story of this crisis should continue being told and those responsible for the loss of lives of children and the general population to be held accountable in international courts.
What do we need to do to address this? I think we need to ensure that humanitarian agencies like UNICEF have the funding. We need to make sure we have people on the ground, that we have sustained humanitarian access, that we have safe access. We need to ensure our staff are not targeted. We need to make sure that countries with influence over the warring parties continue to put pressure on those parties. We need to make sure that people are held accountable for what's happening here, that those who are targeting children, those who are killing people, are held accountable in international criminal courts. We need to make sure that we are telling the story, that we're not just talking about numbers, that we're talking about the lives of children.
Yet says the impact of the aid cuts have had a bearing on the supplies and staff needed to respond to this emergency, which are all needed urgently.
What's been the impact of these cuts? Well, the impact has been enormous. We don't have the staff we need, we don't have the supplies we need, and people continue to die.
Meanwhile, harrowing new details emerged on Thursday in a UN report detailing targeted sexual violence and summary executions in Sudan's North Darfur region attributed to paramilitary fighters who overran the city of El Fasher in late October. Volker Turk, United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, highlights the report's findings.
Our report details killings, rape and torture and other violations that were committed during the three-day offensive on the Samsam IDP camp by the Rapid Support Forces in April this year. Over 1,000 civilians were killed, 319 of them summarily executed, some in their homes and others in the main market, in schools, health facilities and mosques. And more than 400,000 people were displaced once again. Such deliberate killing of civilians or persons hors de combat may constitute the war crime of murder. There must be an impartial, thorough and effective investigation into the attack on the camp, and those responsible for serious violations of international law must be punished. At least 104 people, including 75 women, 26 girls and 3 boys, most of them from the Sagawa ethnic tribe, were subjected to gruesome sexual violence, including rape and gang rape and sexual slavery. Sexual violence appears to have been deliberately used to inflict terror on the community. These horrific patterns of violations committed with impunity are consistent with what my office has repeatedly documented, including during the RSF takeover of El Fasher in October.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongo Beni in Johannesburg.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter?
Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard?
Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126.
And we will call you back.
So you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So yeah, that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views.
Share your opinion.
Engage with a community that values your perspective.
Follow us on our social media.
Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za
and get ready to share your views
on Channel Africa,
the African perspective. Wake up, Africa.
Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m.
Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
And after Rise and Shine, we'll be on the move with Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa Tau. Let's find out what's coming up on this Friday's edition. It's the 19th of December. What can we expect, Mr. Benj?
Hey, man, you know what? The older I get, I know that I'm still a little bit young. I think I'm a little bit young.
Yeah.
But, you know, there is a tendency to have these little things that I do that I feel like they are new, you know, secret pleasures.
Okay.
And I feel guilty about them. Like eating sweets.
That's something you never used to do, but you find yourself doing now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like eating sweets. What's your guilty pleasure?
I don't know.
There must be one. something that you do, but you're like, ish, I shouldn't be having this
No, I don't
extra
know
slab
if
of
I feel
chocolate.
no, not with those kinds of things. I don't have an issue with that, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe carbs, bread, actually.
Ah, okay, there we go.
Yeah, that's my guilty pleasure, especially
Yeah.
with a lot of butter.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to change the type of bread now that I have.
Oh, yeah.
Then I'll slowly wean myself off.
All right, we'll be speaking about guilty pleasures in our first hour of the show today. And then we're going to wrap up the show looking at an artist by the name of Rorisang Sichele. And we're going to find out who they are, find out where they're from. They started in the Jacaranda Children's Choir and they studied at the Tshwane University of Technology. So it's a little bit of an interesting unknown that we are going to find out more about today. It's going to be a little bit jazzy.
Great. It's a great start to start a music career from a choir.
Yeah.
Teaches you a lot about harmony.
Yeah, and also
teamwork.
And also how to listen, right? How
Yeah.
to listen to the people around you, the instruments around you. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you. That's On the Move.
The voice of the continent, now online, with all your sports fixtures, lifestyle, and more.
It's Friday, so we check in with what's happening with the world of entertainment, of lifestyle, and the arts. Here's our section for the Arty Beat. It's brought to us by Nhlanhla Mahlangu, Channel Africa's very own.
Welcome to this week's African RT Beats exclusive to Channel Africa, The African Perspective. I am Nhlanhla Mahlangu. In this week's segment, Grammy Award-winning South African artist Zakes Bantwini has raised serious concerns about the future of the South African Music Awards, and celebrated chef Wandile Mabaso continues to define the contemporary African style of cooking on the global stage. Grammy-winning South African artist Zakes Bantwini has raised serious concerns about the future of the South African Music Awards Summers, warning that they risk losing credibility if changes are not made. In a statement released on his social media, he says the Summers have lost their spark and no longer feel important to the public and even to musicians. He explained that this year's ceremony passed almost unnoticed, with little excitement from fans or artists. According to him, the awards used to be a big national event that everyone looked forward to, but now they barely make an impact. Zakes pointed out that South African artists are achieving global success, with names like Tyler making waves internationally. He believes this shows that the problem is not with the talent, but with the awards themselves. He criticized the judging process, saying that year after year, winners are chosen in ways that don't make sense to fans or the industry. The 31st Annual South African Music Awards were held on Sunday, the 14th of December, 2025. Kwesta, the award-winning rapper behind timeless tracks like Ngudu, collaborated with global restaurant Nando's in a new advertisement that captures South Africa's vibrant identity through humor and everyday stories. The ad uses Kwesta's hit Spirit as its backbone, blending its uplifting lyrics with visuals of local quirks. He says it's always important to understand the business of music.
I think just opening that up, it starts as a small thing. It starts as small things as split sheets, like something that's simple, so that when a deal like this comes up, there's no sort of confusion in terms of the business and the publishing. Because what they do first, especially because it's a sample, they first will try and go to the publishers and the publishing and everything like that. So to the artists, just really make sure everything is written down somewhere, that you have your publishers and you know who they are, so that when big brands like these come calling, there's conversations that need to be had, but they're very clear. Then it makes it easier for whatever campaign you're working on to kind of work. And also just, making music from an honest place and an authentic place, kind of works wonders. When songs don't get old, because that was like almost a mirror or a photo of real moments in a real time. So when you timestamp maybe 2018 till Spirit is almost like the back song in the background, you know. And when you're trying to find something that is authentically South African, the instrumental of Spirit is almost the backdrop of that. And so yeah, just make music from a real place, and everyone will pretty much figure out, and it becomes that instead of you going outside of yourself to do what you think brands want to hear.
What are you currently working on? Can we expect some new music?
Yeah, there's new music. Just literally last week I dropped the song No Makwa Makwa and Questa featuring Umkuzumbani Wasama. Just did a song today with Touchline. But as far as me, the album dropped about 5-6 months ago. It's called The Big Bro Theory. I'm busy shooting the videos now. I just dropped the Nyaga Nyaga. But check me out. I'm doing a lot of collaborations. My whole thing, even with the Big Bro Theory thing, was to big bro everything and to try and collaborate even more than I have with brands, with artists, with anybody that I feel is moving culture and authenticity forward.
With just a few days before Christmas, celebrated South African chef Wandile Mabaso, whose work continues to define contemporary African style of cooking on global stage, shares insights about his culinary journey. The Soweto-born Mabaso is revolutionizing the way people think about modern African food. He says he's always been different.
I always just wanted to be different, and that's something that transcended into my adulthood, where I just wanted to be different. Even for me, my training, where I went, sticking and training in classical French cuisine, it was about being different. You know, there's not a lot of chefs you find in the country that have got that classical French cuisine. Everybody has sort of followed a certain system, going to the UK, you know. So I've always been the outlier, if I may say, and I've always remained that way. I think it worked to my advantage and the decisions that I had made. So coming back to South Africa and then opening the Creative and doing my fine dining experiences, I thought, you know what, if everybody's doing it this way, and we've seen them do it all over Western Cape where all the great restaurants are, but I just wanted to do it different. They're all doing it the same. And I then tapped into, I think, my strong points, which I think everybody should. Whatever you do, tap into your strong points. And my strong point is creativity, vision, you know, just having a vision, and just storytelling. You know, for me, those are the three main elements. And all I do with my cooking is put them together and use them to my full advantage, you know. And I think that's one thing that's lost within food and fine dining. So away with the mimics, away with the theatrics, and let's rather give you an authentic story. And I think the story makes the food taste better, you know?
So with Christmas Day just a few days away, as a chef, what is the one thing that must be included in the menu?
So I think everybody should go back to tradition, yeah? I think a lot of people try to be so you know, forward thinking and creative that they forgot about tradition. And what we've done tonight as well, you know, an interpretation of it, you know, we've gone back to tradition. It's close to Christmas, so we've done a Christmas trifle, which is something we all grew up eating, you know, but we've just refined it and presented it in a different way. But whatever I preach, I then do, because we've done it tonight, and I urge everybody to go for the trifle for Christmas. Go back to tradition, and go back to grandmother, go back to mom making it, go back to basics, and go back to tradition. That's what matters.
That's it from this week's African RT Beats. Until next year, for Channel Africa, I am Ndlandla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
That's how we come to the end of Rise and Shine from me, Asanda Beda, and the team. Goodbye, everybody. Happy Friday.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628.
All right, it's 900 hours Central African time. It's now time for On the Move with myself, Benjamin Mushatama, and Palesata. We're going to take you around this beautiful continent with a little bit of fun. You know, we have a little bit of entertainment on a Friday. But right now, before we get going with that much fun, let's get the latest news.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Benjamin. Looking at your top stories, over 30 new pledges made at the second Global Refugee Forum Progressive Review, and violent protests erupt in several cities across Bangladesh. Your latest news. Greetings to our listeners. Over 30 pledges have been made at the second Global Refugee Forum Progressive Review in Geneva, Switzerland, after 3 days of collaboration that reaffirmed international solidarity and commitment to improving the lives of refugees and the communities that host them. The new pledges were announced at the gathering in areas including refugee access to employment and education, lasting solutions such as sustaining voluntary return home and safe pathways to third countries. This brought the total commitment and pledges since the first Global Refugee Forum in 2019 to almost 3,500 across 47 thematic and regional areas involving over 1,300 actors, including states. Michael Baleke reports.
This week, Japan donated rice worth more than $2 million, helping feed new arrivals in their first days. It's a welcome relief, but officials say it's not a long-term fix. Refugees